Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. During a renovation, they found it hidden, an antique mirror bolted behind a layer of drywall. Its surface was cracked, but something had been written inside the frame in smeared lipstick. She left through here. Behind the glass, faint fingerprints pressed outward. The house on 47 Oakwood Lane had stood empty for nearly 3 years before Martin and Lisa Connolly purchased it in May of 2018. The colonial-style home in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, was everything the young couple had dreamed of. Spacious rooms with hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, and a backyard that seemed to stretch forever into a copse of old maples. The price had been surprisingly reasonable, something their realtor attributed to the housing market downturn and the property's need for cosmetic updates. What their realtor hadn't mentioned was the history of the house's previous occupants. The Dawsons had lived there for nearly 2 decades. Raymond, a high school chemistry teacher, Eleanor, who worked part-time at the local library, and their daughter, Cassandra, though everyone called her Cassie. Cassie Dawson was 19 when she disappeared in November of 2014. Her case had briefly captured local headlines, but faded as quickly as winter melted into spring. No body was ever found. No arrests were ever made. The investigation stalled and eventually went cold, becoming just another folder in a filing cabinet of unsolved mysteries. Raymond and Eleanor had moved away 6 months after their daughter's disappearance, unable to bear the lingering emptiness of a home built for 3, now inhabited by 2. The house remained on the market, gathering dust and whispers, until the Connollys arrived with their dreams and renovation plans. The first few months in their new home were uneventful. Lisa took pride in stripping dated wallpaper and painting the walls in soft, neutral tones. Martin focused on the kitchen, installing new countertops and cabinets. They worked room by room, breathing fresh life into forgotten spaces. It was when they reached the upstairs bathroom, Cassie's bathroom, that things changed. The bathroom had an old-fashioned layout with pink tiles from the 1980s that Lisa was eager to replace. Martin suggested they gut the entire space, removing the old drywall to check for any plumbing issues before proceeding with their design plans. On the second day of demolition, while removing the drywall on the east-facing wall, Martin's sledgehammer broke through to unexpected emptiness. What should have been insulation and the exterior wall was instead a small hollow space, and mounted within that space was an ornate antique mirror, roughly 2 feet tall and 18 inches wide. "Lisa, come look at this," Martin called, his voice carrying a note of confusion that immediately brought his wife upstairs. The mirror's frame was intricately carved mahogany, darkened with age. Its glass surface bore a spiderweb of cracks radiating from the center, as though something or someone had struck it with considerable force. But what caused both Lisa and Martin to step back instinctively was the message written on the inside of the frame in what appeared to be faded red lipstick. She left through here. Even more disturbing were the fingerprints, small, delicate prints pressed against the back of the glass, as though someone had placed their hands flat against the mirror from the other side, pushing outward. "We need to call the police," Lisa whispered, her renovation enthusiasm suddenly replaced by a creeping unease. Detective Harriet Simmons had been with the Bridgewater Police Department for 17 years. She had also been one of the lead investigators on Cassie Dawson's disappearance 4 years earlier. When the call came in about the discovery at 47 Oakwood Lane, she immediately recognized the address. The mirror wasn't there during our initial search, Detective Simmons explained to the Connollys as forensic technicians carefully removed the mirror from its hidden compartment. We did a thorough sweep of the house after Cassie was reported missing. This wall was intact. The revelation that the mirror had been installed after police had searched the home sent a chill through the room. Someone had returned to the house, perhaps Raymond or Alina, and sealed this bizarre object within the walls of their missing daughter's bathroom. Forensic analysis confirmed what they all suspected. The lipstick matched the shade, Cherry Blossom 42, that Alina Dawson was known to wear. The fingerprints behind the glass belonged to Cassie. Detective Simmons reopened the case, focusing now on Raymond and Alina Dawson, who had relocated to Arizona following their daughter's disappearance. When contacted, Alina seemed genuinely shocked by the discovery of the mirror, while Raymond became distant and evasive. Raymond always collected antiques, Alina explained during her interview. He had a particular fascination with mirrors, but I've never seen this one before. Further investigation revealed that Raymond had taken a 2-day leave of absence from his teaching position approximately 3 weeks after Cassie disappeared. According to credit card records, he had purchased construction materials from a local hardware store during that time. As detectives dug deeper into the Dawson family dynamics, a more complex picture emerged. Cassie's friends described her relationship with her father as intense and controlling. Her diary, recovered from a box in the attic that the Connollys had yet to explore, painted an even darker portrait. "Dad watches me through the mirrors," read one entry dated just 2 weeks before her disappearance. "He says they're doorways and that he can see things others can't. I'm afraid of what he sees when he looks at me." Raymond Dawson had no prior criminal record, but his colleagues at the high school described subtle changes in his behavior in the months preceding Cassie's disappearance. He had become increasingly withdrawn and had been spotted having heated arguments with his daughter in the school parking lot on multiple occasions. The case took another turn when police located Raymond's former research partner from his graduate school days at MIT. Dr. Helena Wilcox hadn't spoken to Raymond in nearly 2 decades, but remembered his doctoral thesis vividly. Raymond was brilliant but troubled, Dr. Wilcox explained. His research focused on theoretical physics, specifically the possibility of parallel dimensions existing alongside our own. He became fixated on the idea that certain objects could serve as thresholds between realities. Mirrors were central to his theory. The university had ultimately rejected Raymond's thesis as pseudoscientific and lacking empirical foundation. Shortly afterward, he had abandoned his academic career, settling for a teaching position at Bridgewater High School. When detectives finally tracked down Raymond Dawson at his Arizona home, they found a man consumed by his theories. His garage had been converted into what could only be described as a laboratory, filled with mirrors of various sizes and shapes. Journal entries scattered throughout the space detailed his belief that his daughter hadn't disappeared, but had transitioned to another plane of existence through what he called a threshold mirror, one he had specially prepared through a process involving specific chemical compounds and electromagnetic frequencies. "I didn't hurt her," Raymond insisted during his interrogation. "I saved her. This world was poisoning her. She's somewhere better now, somewhere pure. The fingerprints prove it worked. She's trying to communicate. Psychiatric evaluation determined that Raymond Dawson suffered from delusional disorder with elements of schizotypal personality disorder. While there was no definitive evidence that he had harmed his daughter, prosecutors built a circumstantial case around the hidden mirror, the lipstick message, which they believed he had written to support his delusion, and the troubling diary entries. Eleanor Dawson, confronted with the full extent of her husband's mental deterioration, eventually revealed that she had suspected something was wrong for years but had been too afraid to intervene. "Raymond told me Cassie had run away," she said through tears. "I wanted to believe him. It was easier than facing the alternative." In the absence of a body, prosecutors charged Raymond Dawson with second-degree murder and evidence tampering. The trial lasted 3 weeks, with expert witnesses disagreeing about whether the fingerprints on the mirror could have been transferred there through some elaborate process, or if they represented something more sinister, perhaps Cassie's final moments as she struggled against her father. The jury deliberated for 4 days before returning a guilty verdict. Raymond Dawson was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, maintaining his innocence to the end. As for the mirror itself, it remains in an evidence locker at the Bridgewater Police Department. Occasionally, late at night, officers claim they can hear a faint tapping coming from inside the storage room, like delicate fingers pressing gently against glass. Martin and Lisa Connolly ultimately decided to sell the house on Oakwood Lane, unable to feel comfortable in a space with such a troubling history. Before they left, Lisa swore she heard whispers coming from the bathroom walls, a young woman's voice saying simply, "I'm still here." The case of Cassie Dawson and the mirror behind the drywall remains one of Bridgewater's most disturbing mysteries. While Raymond Dawson serves his sentence, some questions linger unanswered. How did Cassie's fingerprints appear on the backside of the mirror glass? Why did Alina recognize her own lipstick but not the mirror itself? And perhaps most troubling of all, if Cassie was indeed murdered, where are her remains? Sometimes, on particularly quiet nights, Detective Harriet Simmons finds herself standing before the evidence locker, studying the cracked surface of the antique mirror. And sometimes, though she would never admit this to her colleagues, she could swear she sees movement in its depths, like a young woman with familiar features trying to communicate something important from the other side. Crime 2, no bulb, no wiring, just a single rope dangling from the ceiling. The end was knotted twice. When they pulled it, nothing happened. But in the baby monitor static, a soft voice whispered, "Tighter this time." Detective Sarah Brennan stood in the center of the pale yellow nursery, her eyes drawn repeatedly to that rope. It was March 17th, 2023, a Friday morning in the quiet suburb of Whispering Pines, Michigan. The neighborhood was known for its excellent schools, manicured lawns, and families who left their doors unlocked, until now. 3 days earlier, Melissa Chapman had been preparing for the arrival of her first child. She was 32, a kindergarten teacher with kind eyes and a tendency to see the best in people. Her husband, James, worked as an accountant at a firm downtown. They had been married for 4 years, high school sweethearts who reconnected at their 10-year reunion. Everyone who knew them described their relationship as perfect, perhaps too perfect. The nursery had been Melissa's project for months. She had painted the walls herself, a soft yellow that caught the morning light. She had assembled the crib, arranged stuffed animals on a shelf, and filled tiny drawers with neatly folded onesies. But she never installed light fixtures. According to James, she was waiting for a special lamp that was on backorder, a delicate paper lantern shaped like a full moon. She wanted everything to be perfect, James told police, his voice hollow, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a coffee mug that he never drank from. She was just waiting for that lamp. The day Melissa disappeared began like any other. She had a doctor's appointment in the morning, her 8-month checkup. James left for work at 7:45 a.m., kissing her goodbye at the door. Neighbors reported seeing her walk to her car around 9:15, wearing a floral maternity dress and carrying her purse. The security camera at Whispering Pines Medical Center showed her entering the building at 9:48 a.m. Dr. Helen Martinez confirmed that Melissa attended her appointment, that everything looked normal with the pregnancy, and that she left the office at 10:36 a.m., smiling and scheduling her next visit. After that, no one saw Melissa Chapman again. Her car was found in the parking lot of Riverside Mall, 3 miles from her home. Her purse was on the passenger seat, untouched. Her phone was there too, with 3 missed calls from James. The mall's security cameras showed her parking at 11:12 a.m., but never entering the building. The footage wasn't clear enough to see if anyone approached her in the parking lot. When Melissa didn't answer his calls, James said he assumed she was napping. He came home at 5:30 p.m. to an empty house. He waited until 7:00 p.m. before calling the police. "I kept thinking she would walk through the door any minute," he later explained. "Maybe she went to her mother's house. Maybe she was shopping for baby things." But Melissa's mother hadn't heard from her. None of her friends had received calls or texts. Her credit cards hadn't been used. She had simply vanished. The investigation moved slowly at first. Missing persons cases involving adults rarely trigger immediate alarm, even when the person is heavily pregnant. Detective Brennan was assigned to the case the following day, after James had spent the night calling hospitals and friends. "Something about his demeanor bothered me from the start," Brennan would later confess to her partner. "He was worried, sure, but it felt rehearsed." The Chapman house became the center of the investigation. Forensic teams found no signs of struggle, no blood, nothing to suggest violence had occurred there. Everything was in its place except in the nursery. There, on the 3rd day of the investigation, Detective Brennan noticed something odd, a rope hanging from the ceiling. "It wasn't there before," James insisted when questioned. "I don't know how it got there." But the neighbor across the street, Alina Winters, told a different story. Through her bedroom window, she had a clear view of the Chapmans' driveway. On the night Melissa disappeared, around 11:45 p.m., she saw James's car pull in. "He wasn't alone," Alina said. "There was someone in the passenger seat. I assumed it was Melissa, but I couldn't see clearly. They sat there for almost 20 minutes before going inside." When confronted with this information, James changed his story. He admitted that he had left work early that day, around 3:00 p.m. He said he was worried about Melissa and wanted to surprise her. When she wasn't home, he drove around looking for her before returning alone. "Mrs. Winters must be confused," he said. "She's 83. Her eyesight isn't what it used to be." But Alina Winters wasn't confused, and her eyesight, corrected by recently updated prescription glasses, was excellent. She also mentioned something else. In the week before Melissa's disappearance, she had seen James enter and leave the house at odd hours, sometimes very late at night. "He would park down the street and walk to the house," she said, "like he didn't want anyone to know he was coming home." The investigation took a disturbing turn when police discovered that James had purchased 3 items from a hardware store the day before Melissa disappeared: a coil of rope, a pack of heavy-duty garbage bags, and a shovel. The receipt was found in his car, tucked into the owner's manual. When asked about these purchases, James said they were for a gardening project. The shovel was found in the garage. The rope and garbage bags were not. Then came the baby monitor. It was set up in the nursery, the parent unit on the nightstand on what had been Melissa's side of the bed. When Detective Brennan picked it up, she heard static and then something else. A whisper so faint she thought she had imagined it. She turned up the volume and listened again. Tighter this time. The voice was female. The technical team analyzed the baby monitor and discovered something chilling. It had been recording for days, even before Melissa disappeared. The recordings were stored on an SD card, which contained hours of silence interrupted by occasional whispers, all from the same female voice. Under the floorboards, no one will know, tighter this time. The nursery floorboards were pulled up the next day. Beneath them, wrapped in heavy-duty garbage bags, police found Melissa's body. The autopsy revealed that she had been strangled with a rope similar to the one hanging from the ceiling. The baby, a girl, had died with her. But James had an alibi for the estimated time of death. Security footage from his office building showed him at work, talking to colleagues, attending meetings. He couldn't have killed his wife, at least not physically. The investigation took another turn when police identified the female voice on the recordings, Lisa Chapman, James's sister. She lived 3 hours away in Toledo, Ohio, but cell phone records placed her in Whispering Pines on the day Melissa disappeared. When questioned, Lisa initially denied being there, then admitted she had visited but hadn't seen Melissa. James asked me to check on her, she said. He was worried. But why lie about being there? And why were her whispers captured on the baby monitor? The case broke open when police discovered that Lisa had been institutionalized 4 years earlier after attempting to kidnap an infant from a hospital nursery. She had suffered multiple miscarriages and had become obsessed with having a child. She had been released 6 months before Melissa disappeared, deemed stable and no longer a threat. James had never mentioned his sister's history of mental illness. When confronted, he broke down, revealing a disturbing plan. Lisa would take Melissa's baby after killing her, and they would raise the child together as co-parents. Lisa had always been in love with James, he admitted, in a way that went beyond sibling affection. He had used her obsession, manipulating her into doing what he couldn't bring himself to do. Melissa found out about Lisa, he confessed. She found old letters, photos. She threatened to keep the baby away from me. I couldn't let that happen. The rope in the nursery had been Lisa's signature, a reminder of what she had done, what they had planned together. The whispers on the baby monitor were her way of communicating with James when she was hiding in the house, waiting for the right moment. Both James and Lisa Chapman were charged with first-degree murder. During the trial, disturbing details emerged about their relationship and the elaborate plan they had developed over months. The prosecution revealed that James had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Melissa just weeks before her death. Lisa was sentenced to life without parole. James, despite maintaining that he never intended for Melissa to die, received the same sentence. The yellow nursery in Whispering Pines remained empty for years, the house unsold, a silent reminder of what had happened there. Some say that late at night, if you stand outside and listen carefully, you can hear a baby crying. Others claim to have seen a pregnant woman walking toward Riverside Mall, only to vanish in the parking lot. But Detective Brennan doesn't believe in ghosts. What haunts her are the whispers on that baby monitor, the cold calculation in that soft female voice. Tighter this time. and the knowledge that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of unimaginable things. Crime 3, perfectly spaced, barefoot, pressed into the grass as if someone had walked across the lawn, but there were no prints before them and none after. The path ended in front of the mailbox, where a child's drawing had been folded and left, a stick figure floating above the house. Sheriff Dale Kirby had been with the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department for 23 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything quite like the Larson case. Meredith Larson lived alone on Aspen Drive, the kind of quiet suburban street where neighbors knew each other's routines without trying. She was 42, divorced for 8 years, an elementary school librarian who volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. The type of person who remembered everyone's birthdays, who watered her elderly neighbor's plants when he spent winters in Arizona. She never missed a day of work, Principal Gwen Harper told Sheriff Kirby on the Tuesday Meredith didn't arrive for the morning reading circle. Not once in 12 years. The school had called her home phone, no answer. They'd called her cell, straight to voicemail. By noon, the principal had contacted Meredith's sister in Grand Rapids, who hadn't heard from her since their Sunday evening phone call. Nothing had seemed amiss then. They discussed Thanksgiving plans, a new knitting pattern. The book club selection Meredith was halfway through. Sheriff Kirby drove out to Aspen Drive at 1:47 p.m. The April sky hung heavy and gray above him, threatening rain that never quite fell. Meredith's blue Honda Civic sat in the driveway. The curtains were drawn. The newspaper from Monday still waited in its plastic sleeve by the front door. Meredith, he called, knocking firmly. Meredith Larson, Sheriff's Department. The silence that answered him carried an unmistakable weight. He called for backup before entering through the unlocked back door. The house was still and undisturbed. The kitchen counter held a half-empty cup of tea, a light film forming on its surface. In the living room, an open book lay face down on the armrest of a reading chair, a pair of reading glasses folded neatly on the side table. The television was off. Nothing appeared out of place. Nothing was broken. Nothing was missing. Except Meredith herself. Deputy Lisa Weston arrived 15 minutes later. Together, they searched the modest 3-bedroom house. Meredith's purse hung on the coat rack by the door, her wallet inside with $37 and all her credit cards. Her cell phone was charging on her nightstand. Her bed was made. The bathroom counter was dry. The shower curtain hung open. It was as if she had simply evaporated from the house, leaving every trace of her life behind. Could she have gone for a walk, suggested Deputy Weston, though her tone betrayed her doubt. Without her phone or purse, in this weather, Sheriff Kirby shook his head. And why wouldn't she lock the back door? They called in a small team to search the immediate area, the wooded area behind the house, the walking trail that wound through the neighborhood, the small park 3 blocks away. Nothing. It wasn't until Wednesday morning that Sheriff Kirby noticed the footprints. They appeared overnight, pressed into the soft spring grass of Meredith's front lawn. Barefoot impressions, a woman's size by the look of them, walking in a straight line from nowhere to the mailbox, starting at the middle of the lawn, ending at the mailbox. Inside the mailbox was a child's drawing folded twice, a house with a peaked roof, a stick figure floating above it, no legs, just arms outstretched, smiling. "We need to talk to the neighbors again," Sheriff Kirby said, his voice steadier than he felt. "And I want to know who drew this." The neighbors had little to add. Meredith had waved to Mrs. Chen while bringing in her recycling bin on Sunday afternoon. Ed Thompson had seen her lights on at 9:30 p.m. when he walked his dog. After that, nothing unusual. No strange cars, no sounds, no visitors. Except for the Wilson boy. 10-year-old Tommy Wilson from 3 houses down told them something that made the hair on Sheriff Kirby's neck stand up. "I saw Miss Meredith on Monday morning," he said, twisting the hem of his t-shirt. "She was standing in her bedroom window, just standing there." "What time was this, Tommy?" asked Deputy Weston gently. "When I was waiting for the school bus, around 7:30. "Did she wave to you or anything?" Tommy shook his head. She was just standing there looking out, but he hesitated. "But what, Tommy?" Sheriff Kirby prodded. "She wasn't blinking, I remember, because I thought it was weird. She was just staring, not moving. I waved, but she didn't wave back." When they returned to Meredith's home to check the angles from her bedroom window, Sheriff Kirby noticed something else. On the inside of the window, barely visible in the midday light, was a handprint. A small handprint like a child's pressed against the glass. Meredith had no children. She had no family in town besides an aunt in a nursing home who hadn't seen her in months. The investigation expanded. They pulled her phone records, credit card statements, emails. They interviewed her coworkers, her book club, her knitting circle, her ex-husband in Seattle who had a solid alibi. They checked security footage from businesses along the routes she usually took. Nothing fit together, nothing made sense. On Friday, a week after Meredith disappeared, they found something in her basement. Behind an old dresser, hidden but not concealed, was a small wooden box. Inside were 47 folded papers, children's drawings, all with the same house, all with the same floating stick figure. And written on the back of each one, in different children's handwriting, "I miss you." The oldest drawing was dated 27 years earlier. Sheriff Kirby sat at his desk late that night, laying out the drawings in chronological order. The style evolved as the invisible child aged, but the subject never changed. House, floating figure, I miss you. He pulled Meredith's personnel file from the school district. She had worked in 3 different elementary schools across 2 counties over her career. He cross-referenced the dates on the drawings with her employment history. Each drawing corresponded to a period shortly after Meredith had moved to a new school. "I need everything we can find on student deaths or disappearances at these schools," he told Deputy Weston the next morning, "going back 30 years. The records took time to obtain. Weeks passed. Meredith's case grew colder. The footprints in her lawn faded with spring rain. The media lost interest. The school hired a replacement librarian. But Sheriff Kirby couldn't let it go. The drawings haunted him. The handprint on the window. The way Tommy described her standing there, unblinking. In July, 3 months after Meredith vanished, the records finally painted a pattern. At each school where Meredith had worked, there had been a child who had died or disappeared shortly before she arrived. Different circumstances each time: a drowning, a car accident, a disappearance never solved. And in each case, Meredith had taken a special interest in the classmates left behind, started grief counseling groups, created memorial reading corners, kept in touch with the families. She was helping them cope, Deputy Weston suggested. That's admirable, not suspicious. But Sheriff Kirby wasn't convinced it was that simple. He drove out to Aspen Drive again, parked in front of the empty house. The FOR sale sign swayed gently in the summer breeze. Meredith's sister had finally given up hope of her return. Inside, the house had been cleared of personal belongings, but Sheriff Kirby couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, watching from the bedroom window, waiting at the mailbox, drawing pictures of a home it could never return to. He walked across the lawn to the mailbox and opened it, not expecting anything. Inside was a single folded paper, fresh, new, a child's drawing of a house, a floating stick figure, and written on the back, in adult handwriting he recognized from Meredith's lesson plans. "I found them." Sheriff Kirby never filed that last piece of evidence, never mentioned it in his reports. The larceny case remained officially unsolved. Sometimes on quiet nights he drives by the house on Aspen Drive, now occupied by a young couple with no children. He watches the bedroom window, wondering if they ever feel someone standing there, unblinking, wondering if they ever find footprints on their lawn that lead nowhere, wondering if they ever check their mailbox and find drawings of a house with a floating figure above it, arms outstretched, smiling, as if finally home. Crime 4, teeth had gnawed at the edges, small, human-shaped impressions overlapping and layered. Inside, the air was thick with rot. On the steps, someone had laid out candy in a perfect spiral. In the center, a paper tag that read her treat. Detective Marcus Holloway stood motionless at the top of those basement stairs for what felt like hours. The small ranch-style home in Pinewood, Michigan, had been unremarkable from the outside: faded blue siding, neglected flower beds, a mailbox slightly askew. Nothing to suggest what waited below. Melissa Weaver had lived alone in the house for 15 years. Neighbors described her as quiet, reserved, a woman who kept to herself but always waved from across the street. She worked from home as a medical transcriptionist, rarely entertaining visitors except for her sister, who drove in from Grand Rapids every third Sunday. Melissa was 53 years old, never married, with no children. Her sister reported her missing after 3 unanswered phone calls and a canceled lunch date. "She never misses our Sundays," Linda Calloway had told the responding officer. "Never in 15 years." Pinewood was a town where people didn't lock their doors until 10 years ago. The kind of place where the local newspaper still printed birth announcements and high school sports scores on the front page. The last murder had been in 1998, a domestic dispute that ended with a husband shooting his wife before turning the gun on himself. People still talked about it. When Officer Daniels arrived at Melissa's house, nothing appeared disturbed. Her gray Accord sat in the driveway. Mail had accumulated in the box, 4 days' worth. The living room was tidy, dishes washed and put away, bed made with hospital corners. It wasn't until Daniels noticed that the basement door was closed, with a chair pushed firmly against it, that anything seemed amiss. Detective Holloway arrived 3 hours later, after Officer Daniels called in what he'd found. "I didn't touch anything else," Daniels had said, his face ashen. "Just opened the door and saw that." The bite marks on the door were small, child-sized, but there were dozens, perhaps hundreds of them. They formed a pattern around the door's edges, concentrated on the bottom half. Some were shallow, barely breaking the white paint. Others were deep, splintering the wood beneath. Crime scene technicians photographed everything methodically. The spiral of candy, mostly colorful hard candies and wrapped butterscotch, began at the outer edge of the 3rd step and wound inward over 12 more steps to the basement floor. The paper tag in the center was handwritten in careful, almost childlike printing. "A hard treat." The basement itself was ordinary in most ways. Concrete floors, washer and dryer against one wall, storage boxes neatly labeled, a small workshop area with tools hanging on pegboard, everything tidy, organized. Except for the corner furthest from the stairs. There, investigators found a child's mattress on the floor. No bed frame, just the thin mattress with faded Disney princess sheets. Beside it sat a small plastic table with coloring books and broken crayons. A shelf held stuffed animals arranged in a precise row, their glass eyes reflecting the crime scene photographer's flash. No child had been registered as living at the address. Melissa had no children, no grandchildren, no young relatives who visited regularly according to neighbors and her sister. She never mentioned any children, Linda insisted when questioned. I would have known. We talked about everything. The search of the house continued for 3 days. Cadaver dogs indicated something in the backyard near an old maple tree. Excavation revealed bones, small animal bones, arranged in a circle 6 feet in diameter. Forensic analysis would later confirm they belonged to various small mammals, rabbits, squirrels, a neighbor's missing cat. Melissa Weaver herself was nowhere to be found. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Holloway interviewed Patricia Sanderson, an elderly neighbor who lived 3 houses down. She mentioned seeing Melissa with a young girl on several occasions over the past year. Little thing couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, Patricia said, rocking slowly in her porch chair. Thin, with long dark hair, always wearing the same blue dress. I remember thinking that was odd. I asked Melissa about her once, thought maybe she had a niece visiting. She just smiled and said, she's special, never elaborated. When shown photographs of missing children from the surrounding counties, Patricia couldn't identify any as the girl she'd seen. There was something not quite right about her, Patricia added, her voice dropping to a whisper. The way she moved, too, deliberate, and I never heard her speak, not once. The investigation widened. Records showed that Melissa had worked at Pinewood Memorial Hospital as a nurse in the pediatric ward for 20 years before transitioning to work-from-home transcription. Former colleagues described her as competent but withdrawn, especially after a particularly difficult case, a young girl named Emily Winters who had died of complications from leukemia in 2008. Emily had been 8 years old, with long dark hair. Detective Holloway obtained Emily's medical records and found that Melissa had been her primary nurse during 3 long hospital stays. Notes indicated she had formed an unusually close bond with the child. After Emily's death, Melissa had taken a 3-month leave of absence before resigning from her position entirely. Emily's parents, now divorced and living in different states, were contacted. Neither had spoken to Melissa since their daughter's funeral, though her mother, Catherine Winters, recalled that Melissa had seemed devastated, maybe even more than some family members, when Emily died. She brought Emily candy every day, Catherine remembered. Hard candies, butterscotch. Emily couldn't eat much toward the end, but she'd arrange them in patterns on her tray. Said it made her happy to create something beautiful. The investigation continued for months. Melissa's bank accounts showed regular withdrawals, but no unusual activity. Her credit cards hadn't been used since her disappearance. Her passport remained in her dresser drawer, untouched. The bite marks on the basement door were analyzed extensively. Dental impressions confirmed they couldn't have been made by an adult. The jaw size and tooth placement were consistent with a child between 6 and 9 years old. DNA tests from saliva traces were inconclusive, contaminated by exposure to air and time. 6 months after Melissa's disappearance, a security camera at a gas station 50 miles north of Pinewood captured footage of a woman resembling her. She was purchasing candy, hard candies and butterscotch, and a blue dress in a child's size. The footage was grainy, and the woman kept her head down, but the gait analysis suggested a high probability match. The clerk remembered her only vaguely. Quiet lady, paid cash, seemed in a hurry but not scared or nothing, just determined. In the car beside her, barely visible through the window, sat what appeared to be a small figure in the passenger seat. The camera angle made it impossible to determine if it was a child or perhaps just a collection of items on the seat. 1 year passed, then 2. Melissa Weaver was officially declared a missing person, but the case remained open. Detective Holloway kept coming back to the basement. Something about the candy spiral, the bite marks, the careful arrangement of toys. It wasn't the chaos of violence or the disarray of struggle. Everything had been placed with intention, with care. 3 years after the initial investigation, an anonymous package arrived at the Pinewood Police Department addressed to Detective Holloway. Inside was a single butterscotch candy and a child's drawing, crayon on white paper. It depicted 2 stick figures holding hands, a tall one and a small one. Both had oversized smiles with pointed teeth. On the back, in the same careful printing as the Her Treat tag, were the words, "We're happy now." Handwriting analysis confirmed it matched the original tag, but the package had been mailed from Seattle, Washington, over 2,000 miles away. By the time local authorities checked security footage from the post office, it was long overwritten. The case of Melissa Weaver and the mysterious child remains officially unsolved. The house in Pinewood sits empty, its blue paint peeling further with each passing season. Local children dare each other to approach the porch but never to enter. They whisper stories about the woman who lived there and the little girl no one knew. Sometimes residents driving past claim to see 2 figures in the upstairs window, one tall, one small, watching the street below. By the time they look again, the window is always empty. The basement door, with its hundreds of small bite marks, was removed as evidence and sits in a police storage facility. Occasionally, late at night, evidence clerks swear they hear a sound coming from the sealed container where it's kept. The sound of small teeth gnawing patiently at wood. Crime 5, poured carefully, evenly, spread in symbols no one could identify. In the center stood a single child's chair facing the wall. Underneath it was a name burned into the wood, not her real one. The salt had teeth embedded in it. The small town of Oak Ridge, Minnesota, didn't have much to recommend it to outsiders. A population of just under 7,000, a main street that could be walked end to end in 20 minutes, and winters that seemed to last 8 months of the year. People knew each other here, or at least they thought they did. Margaret Tillman had lived in the same pale blue clapboard house on Willow Street for 43 years. She'd raised 3 children there, buried a husband, and settled into the kind of quiet retirement that involved bird feeders, mystery novels, and weekly bridge games at the Lutheran church. At 72, she was known for her lemon bars at community events and her perfectly maintained flower beds that bloomed from early spring until the first frost. Her neighbors described her as proper, reserved, but always ready with a kind word. She volunteered at the elementary school reading program every Wednesday and kept her Christmas lights up until exactly January 6th each year, never a day longer or shorter. Her life ran with the predictability of the antique grandfather clock in her living room, which she wound faithfully every Sunday evening. On April 17, 2023, Margaret didn't show up to read to Mrs. Peterson's first grade class. The school called her home, no answer. Her daughter Ellen, who lived 2 towns over, received a call from the principal around noon. It wasn't like Margaret to miss a commitment without notice. In fact, no one could remember her ever having done so before. Ellen tried her mother's landline, then her rarely used cell phone. Both went straight to voicemail. "I'll drive over," Ellen told the principal, feeling the first flutter of unease in her stomach. She's probably just under the weather and forgot to call. The drive to her childhood home took 35 minutes. When Ellen pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal. Margaret's 10-year-old Buick was parked in its usual spot. The newspaper had been retrieved from the porch. The bird feeders were full. Ellen used her key to let herself in. "Mom," she called, her voice echoing through the quiet house. The kitchen was spotless, a single mug rinsed and placed upside down on the dish rack. A half-finished crossword puzzle sat on the kitchen table next to a pair of reading glasses. Moving through the house, Ellen found no sign of disturbance. Her mother's bed was made with hospital corners, just as it had been every day since Ellen could remember. The bathroom towels hung perfectly aligned on their racks. But Margaret was nowhere to be found. Ellen called her brothers, who lived out of state. She called her mother's friends from church. No one had heard from Margaret since Sunday service 2 days prior. By evening, Ellen filed a missing persons report with the local police department. Officer Daniel Carmichael took the report. He was in his mid-30s, had grown up in Oak Ridge, and knew Margaret well. She'd been his 3rd-grade reading buddy 27 years earlier. "She's probably visiting a friend and forgot to mention it," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. They both knew Margaret wasn't the type to forget. The next morning, a search began. Neighbors formed groups to comb the nearby woods. The local news ran a story. Margaret's picture, showing a thin woman with silver hair cut in a neat bob, wearing a blue cardigan and pearl earrings, appeared on telephone poles and in shop windows throughout town. 3 days passed with no sign of her. On the 4th day, Officer Carmichael decided to conduct a more thorough search of Margaret's property. The house had already been carefully examined, but the yard contained several outbuildings, a garage, a garden shed, and a small greenhouse. The garage and greenhouse revealed nothing unusual. The garden shed, however, had a padlock on it. "Did your mother usually lock this?" Carmichael asked Ellen, who had been staying at the house. "Never," Ellen replied, staring at the unfamiliar lock. She kept gardening tools in there. There was nothing valuable. They found a pair of bolt cutters in the garage and removed the lock. Carmichael pulled open the wooden door. The interior was dim, with only a small, dirty window letting in light. He reached for the pull string of the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The shed floor was covered in salt. Poured carefully, evenly, spread in symbols no one could identify. In the center stood a single child's chair facing the wall. Underneath it was a name burned into the wood, not her real one. The salt had teeth embedded in it. Ellen gasped and stepped back. Carmichael's hand instinctively moved to his gun, though there was clearly no one else in the small space. The teeth were small, children's teeth. Later examination would confirm they were baby teeth, not forcibly removed but naturally shed. The police immediately expanded their investigation. Margaret's phone records, bank statements, and computer were all examined. Interviews with neighbors revealed something odd. Several had noticed Margaret spending unusual amounts of time in her garden shed over the past few months. One neighbor, Harriet Wilson, mentioned seeing lights in the shed at odd hours, sometimes as late as 2 or 3 in the morning. I thought she might be having trouble sleeping, Harriet told investigators. After my Harold passed, I would garden at all hours just to keep my mind occupied. More disturbing information emerged when the police searched Margaret's computer. Despite her seemingly limited technical abilities, she had been visiting forums dedicated to obscure religious practices, particularly those involving protective rituals. Her search history showed repeated queries about guarding against harmful spirits and binding rituals using salt. Ellen and her brothers were stunned. Mom was Lutheran her whole life, Ellen insisted. She wasn't into anything weird. But Margaret's browser history suggested otherwise. In the months leading up to her disappearance, she had been researching increasingly esoteric topics. The final searches made the night before she vanished included how to know if a binding ritual worked and what happens if Salt Circle is broken. As investigators dug deeper into Margaret's life, they discovered she had been withdrawing cash from her savings account, small amounts at first, but increasing over time. In the 6 months before her disappearance, she had removed nearly $30,000, all in person at her local bank branch. The bank teller remembered Margaret's explanation. She said she was helping a child in need. I didn't think much of it. She was always doing charitable things. A child in need, the child's chair, the teeth. The investigation took a turn when police interviewed the staff at the elementary school where Margaret volunteered. Nothing seemed amiss until they spoke with the school secretary, who mentioned that Margaret had developed a particular interest in one student, a 7-year-old girl named Lily Matthews. She would ask about Lily's attendance, seemed concerned when she missed school, the secretary recalled. I thought she was just being caring. Margaret was like that. Lily Matthews lived with her grandmother, Ruth, on the outskirts of town. Her mother had died of an overdose when Lily was 3, and no one knew who her father was. When police visited their home, Ruth seemed nervous, repeatedly saying there was nothing to worry about before they even asked any questions. Lily herself was quiet, watching the officers with solemn dark eyes. When asked if she knew Mrs. Tillman, she nodded and said simply, "She protects me." A search warrant for the Matthews home revealed a shoebox under Lily's bed containing nearly $20,000 in cash and a set of letters from Margaret. The letters made references to keeping you safe and making sure they can't find you. More disturbingly, they found an envelope containing baby teeth, with gaps in the collection that matched the teeth found in the salt pattern. Ruth Matthews eventually broke down under questioning. She revealed that Margaret had approached her months earlier, insisting that Lily was in danger. She said she'd had dreams, visions of something coming for Lily, Ruth explained through tears. I thought she was just a lonely old woman at first, but then she started telling me things about Lily's mother that nobody knew, things about what happened to her. According to Ruth, Margaret had convinced her that Lily needed protection from the same forces that had supposedly driven her mother to addiction and death. The money was for a fresh start somewhere else where they couldn't find them. The day Margaret disappeared, Ruth had received a text message. "It's time. They've found us. Take Lily and the money and go to the address I gave you. Don't tell anyone." But Ruth hadn't gone. She was scared, uncertain if she believed Margaret's increasingly bizarre warnings. She had kept Lily home from school, but otherwise waited to see what would happen. The address turned out to be a small cabin in northern Wisconsin, owned by a trust that couldn't be easily traced. When police visited the location, they found it clean and empty, stocked with non-perishable food and basic supplies, clearly prepared for someone's arrival. But there was no sign of Margaret. The investigation continued for weeks, then months. The salt pattern in the shed was analyzed by experts in religious symbolism, who identified elements from various protective rituals, but nothing that matched any known tradition exactly. The teeth confirmed to be Lily's baby teeth that had naturally fallen out, apparently collected by Margaret with Ruth's permission, under the guise of keeping them safe. Psychological evaluations of Margaret's writings and computer activities suggested she had been suffering from an undiagnosed delusional disorder, possibly triggered by the combination of aging, loneliness, and an excessive consumption of true crime media found in her streaming history. And yet certain details didn't fit that explanation. How had Margaret known intimate details about Lily's mother's death that even Ruth claimed were never made public? Why did Lily continue to insist, even months later, that the bad things stopped happening when Margaret started helping her? 1 year after Margaret's disappearance, the case remains officially open but inactive. Her body has never been found. The money not recovered from Lily's shoebox remains unaccounted for. Ruth and Lily still live in the same house, though Ruth admits she keeps the salt shaker closer than she used to. Ellen sold her mother's house 6 months after she vanished. The new owners demolished the garden shed immediately upon moving in, saying they had no use for it. During the demolition, workers found something scratched into the wood beneath the floorboards, a message that had been hidden from view. "If you're reading this, I succeeded. She's safe now. I'm with them instead." The message was logged as evidence, but like everything else in the case of Margaret Tillman, it offered more questions than answers. In Oak Ridge, people still lower their voices when they talk about the old woman who disappeared and the little girl who says she was saved, though from what, nobody knows for certain. Some say that on quiet nights, if you drive past the house where the garden shed once stood, you can see small piles of salt appearing on the ground where its foundation used to be. But in Minnesota, people are practical. It's probably just road salt carried by the wind, they tell themselves. It has to be. Crime 6, drawings stretched across the hallway, stick figures, scribbled animals, a figure with long black arms reaching from room to room. One panel showed a family dinner with a 5th person at the table, drawn in solid black. No one remembered who had lived there before. The Harmon family moved into 1428 Sycamore Lane in October of 2017. Sarah and Daniel had been searching for months before finding the modest 3-bedroom in the quiet suburb of Millfield, Massachusetts. Their twin daughters, Lily and Emma, were excited to have a backyard with a tire swing. At 7 years old, they had spent most of their lives in a cramped apartment near Boston. It was the perfect starter home, Sarah would later tell Detective Rivera during their 3rd interview. The price was lower than everything else in the neighborhood. We thought we were lucky. On their first night in the house, Emma woke up screaming. Sarah found her daughter sitting upright in bed, eyes fixed on the corner of the room. "The drawing man is here," Emma whispered. Sarah assumed it was just the stress of moving. She left the hallway light on and sat with Emma until she fell back asleep. The following morning, Daniel discovered the first drawing while installing shelves in the girl's closet. Behind the previous owner's abandoned coat rack was a crayon sketch of a tall, thin figure standing beside a small house. The proportions were odd. The figure towered over the house, its arms reaching around the structure. Daniel showed it to Sarah, who shrugged it off. Kids draw weird things, she said. We can just paint over it. But they found more drawings in the coming days, behind furniture, inside cupboards, and eventually, when they peeled back the faded wallpaper in the hallway, an elaborate mural spanning the entire corridor. The images were unsettling but not overtly frightening. Stick figures with exaggerated limbs, houses with windows like eyes, and animals with too many legs. Most disturbing was the recurring figure with long black arms that appeared in nearly every scene. I asked our realtor about the previous owners, Daniel told officers in his statement. She just said it was an older couple who moved to Florida, said they didn't have children or grandchildren who stayed over often. That's when I started to wonder who did all the drawings. 3 weeks after moving in, the twins began to change. Always close, they now whispered constantly to each other, falling silent whenever Sarah or Daniel entered the room. They started sleeping in the same bed despite having separate rooms. Their kindergarten teacher, Ms. Hayes, called the parents in for a meeting after the girls submitted identical drawings for an art project, both depicting a family of 4 with a 5th figure standing behind them, its arms stretching around them all. We're concerned about the content of their artwork, Ms. Hayes explained, showing them a folder of similar drawings. Is everything okay at home? Sarah and Daniel assured her everything was fine. On the drive home, they questioned the twins, who only shrugged and said, "That's just how he looks." In late November, Sarah discovered a journal wedged behind the washing machine while cleaning. The handwriting belonged to an adult, but the content was childlike, rambling descriptions of the tall man who talks to me through the walls. The final entry was dated August 3, 2016, over a year before they moved in. It read, "He says if I draw him enough times, he can stay forever. I think I've almost done it. I don't know if I want him to stay anymore." Sarah immediately called the realtor, who finally admitted the truth. The previous owners weren't a couple, but a single woman named Alina Marsh, who had lived alone in the house for 30 years. According to county records, she had been found wandering the streets in August 2016, suffering from severe dementia. She died in a care facility 3 months later. The house had remained empty until the Harmons purchased it. "Why would you lie about something like that?" Sarah demanded. "The house was hard enough to sell as it was," the realtor replied. "Look, old people get confused. Whatever she was drawing on those walls was just her mind playing tricks." That night, Daniel decided to remove the hallway wallpaper completely and repaint. As he worked, he discovered that the drawings extended much further than they had initially thought. Layer upon layer of crayon artwork covered nearly every wall in the house, hidden beneath years of wallpaper and paint. Most disturbing was the recurring image of the dinner table, each time with an additional figure added, always drawn in solid black. The twins' behavior continued to deteriorate. They refused to sleep in their bedrooms, instead making a fort in the living room. They whispered constantly about the 5th chair at the table. Sarah found them sleepwalking multiple times, standing in front of the kitchen wall, which they had started to draw on with crayons Daniel didn't remember buying. On December 12th, Daniel's mother came to visit. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Daniel's mother froze, staring at the table. "Why do you have 5 chairs?" she asked. Sarah and Daniel looked at each other in confusion. "We don't," Sarah said. "There are only 4 of us." But when they looked back, there were indeed 5 chairs at the table. Neither Sarah nor Daniel could explain where the 5th chair had come from or how long it had been there. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Sarah heard scratching sounds from the hallway. She found both twins crouched by the wall, drawing with black crayons. Their movements were mechanical, their eyes unfocused. When she called their names, they didn't respond. The drawings showed 5 figures, 2 small, 2 large, and 1 tall black figure with impossibly long arms. "They're in a trance," Detective Rivera noted in his report. Parents attempted to wake them but couldn't break their concentration. When forcibly moved from the wall, both girls became hysterical and violent. The family spent the night in a hotel. The next morning, Daniel returned to the house alone to collect some belongings. According to the neighbor's statement, Daniel entered the house at approximately 9:42 a.m. At 10:15 a.m., the same neighbor reported hearing a single, prolonged scream. When officers arrived at 10:28 a.m., they found the front door open. Inside, every wall had been stripped of wallpaper, revealing layer upon layer of crayon drawings, some appearing decades old, others freshly made. The drawings showed the same scenes repeating: the house, the family, the dinner table with an additional figure each time, and the tall black figure with long arms. Daniel Harmon was never found. The only trace was a single black crayon in the center of the kitchen floor and a new drawing on the wall, a family of 5, with the tallest figure now colored in with Daniel's distinctive red hair. Sarah and the twins never returned to the house. In her final interview with Detective Rivera 6 months later, Sarah revealed that the twins still drew the same figure but now referred to it as Daddy. When asked if she believed her husband was dead, Sarah's response was recorded as follows: "Dead? No, I don't think he's dead. I think he's still in that house. I think he's in the walls with all the others. Sometimes I wonder how long the drawings have been there, how many families before us, how many people have become just another figure at the table." The Harmon case remains officially classified as an unsolved disappearance. The house at 1428 Sycamore Lane was demolished in early 2019 after 2 construction workers hired to renovate the property also vanished. During demolition, workers reported finding thousands of crayons inside the walls. A final note in Detective Rivera's case file mentions that several neighbors have reported seeing lights in the empty lot where the house once stood. Children in the area have begun drawing a tall figure with long arms reaching across what appears to be an empty space, as if the house, invisible to adults, somehow remains. Crime 7, not dust, not stuffing, ash. When the cushions were opened, tiny bones tumbled out, too small to be from animals. A note was sewn into the lining with red thread. It read, "You sat on her too." The discovery occurred on a mild October evening in 2017 in the quiet town of Millfield, Connecticut. Amanda Reeves, a 32-year-old interior designer, had purchased the vintage floral couch at an estate sale 3 weeks prior. The previous owner, Alina Whitman, had passed away at 94, leaving behind a colonial-style home filled with antiques and furniture that had witnessed decades of family history. Amanda had been drawn to the couch's faded blue floral pattern and solid oak frame. "It has character," she had told her husband, Michael. "We just need to reupholster it." That evening, as Amanda sliced open the first cushion to begin the reupholstering process, her scissors revealed something unexpected. The stuffing inside wasn't the usual cotton or polyester filling. It was gray, powdery, mixed with what appeared to be small fragments of bone. At first, Amanda thought it might be some kind of insect infestation or perhaps rodent remains. But as she carefully emptied the contents onto newspaper spread across her garage floor, the truth became undeniable. The ash had a distinctive quality that anyone who has handled human cremains would recognize, and the bones, tiny, delicate fragments, seemed too small, too fine to belong to anything but a child. The handwritten note, sewn with meticulous care into the lining with crimson thread, turned Amanda's confusion into horror. "You sat on her too. 4 words that transformed an ordinary furniture restoration project into something unimaginable. Detective Sarah Harmon arrived at the Reeves residence 40 minutes after Amanda's call to the police. At 48, Harmon had worked in Millfield's small police department for 23 years. She had investigated domestic disturbances, drug-related crimes, and even the occasional violent assault, but never a case that began with human remains hidden inside furniture. "Tell me again about where you got this couch," Harmon asked, her voice steady as she surveyed the scene in the garage. Amanda explained about Alina Whitman's estate sale, managed by Alina's only living relative, a nephew named Thomas Whitman who had come from Oregon to settle his aunt's affairs. "Did you speak with this Thomas personally?" Harmon asked, jotting notes in her small leather-bound notebook. Briefly, Amanda replied. He seemed distant. Said he hadn't seen his aunt in over 20 years. He just wanted to clear out the house quickly and get back home. Detective Harmon collected samples of the ash and bone fragments, photographed the note, and sealed everything in evidence bags. The lab would need to confirm if the remains were indeed human, though everyone present seemed certain they were. The question that lingered over the Reeves household that night was not just whose remains they had discovered, but who had hidden them there and why. The investigation into Alina Whitman's past began the following morning. Records showed that Alina had lived in the colonial house on Maple Street since 1952, when she and her husband, Howard, had purchased it as newlyweds. Howard had passed away in 1989 from heart failure. The couple had no children of their own. Or so the official records indicated. Detective Harmon interviewed neighbors who had known Alina for decades. Meredith Collins, an 80-year-old woman who lived next door, provided the first glimpse into a history that didn't match the official records. "There was a little girl," Meredith said, her arthritic hands wrapped around a mug of tea as she sat across from Harmon in her living room. This would have been, let me think, around 1956 or 57. Alina was taking care of her. A toddler couldn't have been more than 3, pretty little thing with blonde curls. I assumed she was a relative's child that they were watching. "Do you know how long the child stayed with them?" Harmon asked. "That's the strange thing," Meredith replied, her brow furrowing. "She was there for several months, and then one day she wasn't. When I asked Alina about her, she just said, 'She's gone back to her people.' I didn't press. Back then, we didn't pry into others' business the way people do now." The laboratory confirmed 3 days later what everyone suspected. The ash contained human remains, specifically those of a child estimated to be between 2 and 4 years of age. DNA extraction was attempted, but decades of storage in the couch cushion had degraded the genetic material beyond usefulness. Thomas Whitman, Alina's nephew, was contacted again. In a phone interview, he expressed shock at the discovery but offered little insight. "Aunt Alina was always peculiar," he admitted. "My mother, her sister, had a falling out with her in the early 60s. They barely spoke after that." When pressed about the reason for the falling out, Thomas hesitated. "My mother never went into detail. She just said that Alina had done something unforgivable. I always assumed it was some trivial family dispute. Now I'm not so sure." The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Harmon discovered a series of payments in Alina's financial records spanning from 1957 to 1972. Monthly sums of $75 were sent to a Margaret Lawson in Bridgeport. The payment stopped abruptly in December 1972. Margaret Lawson proved difficult to trace, having died in 1980. However, her daughter, Patricia Lawson Reynolds, still lived in New Haven. When contacted, Patricia, now in her 70s, revealed a connection that sent the investigation in a new direction. My mother worked as a nurse at Millfield General Hospital in the 50s, Patricia explained when Detective Harmon visited her apartment. She never talked much about those days, but I remember her mentioning the Whitmans. There was something about a child, a little girl who had been in their care temporarily. Patricia rummaged through a box of her mother's keepsakes and extracted a yellowed envelope. Inside was a black and white photograph showing a young couple, presumably Howard and Alina Whitman, standing stiffly beside a small blonde girl in a dress. The child wasn't smiling. On the back, written in faded ink, Anna, age 3, 1957. My mother kept this hidden, Patricia said quietly. I found it after she died, along with a diary. In it, she wrote that she had protected Anna's secret at great cost. I never understood what that meant. The pieces began to form a disturbing mosaic. A child named Anna, temporarily in the Whitmans' care. A falling out between Alina and her sister. Monthly payments to a nurse who had worked at the local hospital. And human remains hidden inside a couch that had sat in Alina Whitman's living room for decades. Hospital records from 1957 were largely destroyed in a fire in the 1980s, but Detective Harmon managed to locate a retired administrator who remembered the Whitmans. Gerald Peters, now in his 90s and living in a nursing home, recalled them clearly. They came in about a fostering situation, Gerald said, his voice thin but his memory surprisingly sharp. Howard and Alina were hoping to adopt. There was a little girl. Her parents had died in an accident, I believe. The arrangement was temporary while permanent placement was found. Do you remember what happened to the child? Harmon asked. Gerald's expression clouded. There was an incident. The child fell ill suddenly, high fever, respiratory distress. She was brought to the emergency room, but he trailed off. I believe she didn't make it. These things happened more frequently back then, before modern antibiotics and treatments. But if Anna had died in a hospital, there would have been a death certificate, an obituary, some official record of her passing. Detective Harmon found none. The monthly payments to Margaret Lawson suggested something else, hush money, perhaps, or payment for helping stage a death and dispose of remains in a way that wouldn't raise questions. When forensic analysts examined the red thread used to sew the note into the couch lining, they made another discovery. The thread contained traces of a powerful sedative that had been common in the 1950s, but was later removed from the market due to safety concerns. The same sedative was found in minuscule amounts in the ash. The picture that emerged was one of unimaginable cruelty. A temporary foster child who had become inconvenient. A nurse paid to look the other way, or worse, to provide the means. A death made to look natural, and remains hidden in plain sight inside a piece of furniture where the Whitmans and their visitors had sat for decades. Thomas Whitman was interviewed again, this time in person. When presented with the evidence, his face drained of color. There were rumors in the family, he finally admitted. My mother once mentioned during a fight with my father that her sister had killed that poor child. I thought she was speaking metaphorically. Alina Whitman had taken her secrets to the grave. Howard, her husband and possible accomplice, had preceded her in death by nearly 3 decades. Margaret Lawson, the nurse who might have provided the full story, was also long gone. All that remained was the undeniable evidence of a child's remains and a confession sewn into fabric. You sat on her too. The case of Anna, whose full name and origin remained unknown, couldn't be prosecuted. The perpetrators were beyond earthly justice. but Detective Harmon ensured that the remains were properly interred in Millfield Cemetery, with a small headstone bearing only the name Anna in the year 1957. The couch was destroyed after the investigation concluded. Amanda Reeves declined to have it returned to her home, saying, "I couldn't bear to look at it, knowing what it contained, knowing what it represented." For the residents of Millfield, the case of the ash-filled couch became a whispered legend, a reminder that behind closed doors of even the most respectable homes, darkness can fester undetected for decades. And for Detective Harmon, it remained the one case that never truly closed, the face of a small blonde girl in a black and white photograph haunting her dreams long after she filed the final report. In the years that followed, flowers would occasionally appear on Anna's grave. No one ever saw who left them. Some speculated it might be Patricia Reynolds, honoring a secret her mother had kept. Others wondered if it might be Thomas Whitman, attempting to atone for his family's sins. But most believed it was the collective conscience of Millfield itself, acknowledging a debt that could never be repaid to a child who had been forgotten by everyone except the cushions that held her remains. Crime ate baby teeth, some labeled with dates, others with initials. When spun, the teeth jingled. One had a string attached leading into the attic. They followed it and found a pile of drawings. Everyone showed a mouth wide open, with nothing inside. The first officer on the scene was Deputy Rebecca Carnes. She'd never seen anything like it in her 15 years with the Coldwater County Sheriff's Department. The ceiling fan in the living room of 437 Lakeside Drive had been modified. Human teeth, small ones, children's teeth, had been meticulously attached to each blade with clear packing tape. 27 teeth in total. Rebecca had responded to a wellness check called in by Marion Wilson, the sister of homeowner Eleanor Beckett. Eleanor, a 42-year-old dental hygienist, hadn't shown up for her shift at Lakeview Dental for 3 consecutive days. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her car remained in the driveway. Marion stood trembling on the front porch while Rebecca entered the home. The house was immaculate, almost too perfect. Every surface gleamed. The air smelled of lemon cleaner and something else Rebecca couldn't identify. A faint chemical odor, perhaps. "Eleanor's been a neat freak since we were kids," Marion had explained earlier, "but she's never missed work, not once in 12 years." The kitchen contained nothing unusual. Dishes stacked in cabinets, countertops wiped clean, refrigerator humming quietly. The bathroom was similarly pristine, towels folded with geometric precision. It was in the living room where Rebecca first noticed something wasn't right. The ceiling fan. Rebecca called for backup immediately. While waiting, she discovered the string attached to one particular tooth, a small canine with the initial M written in faded blue ink. The string disappeared into a small hole in the ceiling, barely noticeable unless you were looking directly at it. Detective James Norwood arrived 30 minutes later. Together, they followed the string into the attic through the pull-down stairs in the hallway. The space was unfinished, illuminated only by their flashlights. Insulation covered the floor between exposed beams. At the center of the attic, directly above the living room, lay a neat stack of children's drawings. Each drawing depicted the same unsettling image. A human mouth wide open, completely hollow, no teeth, just emptiness where teeth should be. "We need to find Eleanor," Norwood said quietly, "and we need to figure out whose teeth these are." Eleanor Beckett had moved to Coldwater in 2011. She'd arrived with excellent references from her previous employer in Seattle and quickly secured her position at Lakeview Dental. Colleagues described her as quiet, efficient, and intensely private. She rarely joined office gatherings and declined most invitations for after-work drinks or weekend barbecues. She was always pleasant, Dr. Angela Martinez, the lead dentist at the practice, told Detective Norwood during their interview. Patients loved her. She had a way with nervous children especially. She talked to them so calmly, show them all the instruments, explain everything. Kids who used to scream and cry would sit still for Alina. Alina lived alone, no husband, no children. Her sister Marion lived 3 hours away in Riverside and visited only on holidays. According to neighbors, Alina kept to herself. She maintained her yard meticulously, waved politely when passing, but initiated few conversations. "The only visitors I ever saw were children," said Thomas Greeley, who lived across the street. "Maybe once or twice a month, a car would pull up and a parent would drop off a child, usually elementary school age. The child would go inside, stay for an hour or so, then get picked up again." When questioned further, Greeley couldn't recall seeing any particular child more than once. He'd assumed Alina was tutoring or offering some kind of lessons. The forensics team confirmed what everyone feared. The teeth on the ceiling fan were human, specifically primary teeth, baby teeth from multiple individuals. Some had fallen out naturally, others showed signs of extraction. Preliminary DNA testing revealed they came from at least 11 different children. The search for Alina intensified. Her bank accounts showed no recent activity. Her passport remained in her desk drawer. Her Toyota Camry sat in the garage with a full tank of gas. 3 days into the investigation, Detective Norwood received a call from a 5th grade teacher at Coldwater Elementary School. Danielle Fisher had recognized Alina's name and address from the local news. "Alina volunteered for our Comfort Corner program," Danielle explained when they met at the school. "It's for kids going through tough times, divorce, loss, bullying. We match them with adult mentors who meet with them weekly, just to talk and provide stability." Records showed Alina had mentored 17 children over the past decade. All were between ages 5 and 11, the age range when children typically lose their baby teeth. When Norwood interviewed the children and their parents, a pattern emerged. Alina had established a ritual with her mentees. When they lost a tooth during the time they were seeing her, she'd offer to keep it safe in what she called her special collection. "She told Tyler it was magic," said Melissa Burnett, mother of a 9-year-old boy who had met with Alina for 6 months. That if he gave her his tooth instead of putting it under his pillow, she'd make sure good things happened to him. It seemed harmless at the time. None of the children reported anything inappropriate occurring during their sessions with Alina. They described drawing pictures, talking about their feelings, and playing board games. Several mentioned the tooth collection Alina kept in a small wooden box, but said they never saw inside it. 1 week after Rebecca Carnes discovered the ceiling fan, a package arrived at the sheriff's department addressed to Detective Norwood. It contained a single folded piece of paper and an adult molar wrapped in tissue. The tooth had a silver filling. The note read, "When I was 7, my dentist took my tooth and told me the pain would stop. He lied. The pain never stopped. Now I'm collecting promises. Each tooth is a promise to protect a child who needs protection. Look for me where the rivers meet. I'll be waiting with the last tooth." Cell phone records placed Alina's phone near Coldwater Junction, where the Blackwater and Miller Rivers converged 15 miles north of town. The area was heavily wooded, accessible only by a narrow hiking trail. A search team found Alina's body the next morning, seated against an oak tree overlooking the water. She had died from a self-inflicted wound. In her hand was a small leather-bound journal. Beside her lay an open wooden box containing 12 more baby teeth, each labeled with a name and date. The journal contained detailed accounts of Aliner's interactions with each child she'd mentored. It also held a dark secret she'd carried since childhood, years of abuse at the hands of a family dentist who had since died. The entries described her belief that by collecting the children's teeth, she was somehow absorbing their pain, protecting them from suffering as she had suffered. The final page contained a list of names, the children whose teeth adorned her ceiling fan. Beside each name was a single word: saved. The investigation continued for months. Each child was interviewed extensively by trained professionals. Remarkably, none showed signs of abuse from Aliner. If anything, they spoke of her with affection. She had genuinely helped many of them through difficult periods. The drawings found in the attic remain the most disturbing element of the case. Forensic psychologists determined they were Aliner's own work, recreations of drawings she'd made as a child, depicting her internal sense of emptiness and loss. In her mind, she was doing something protective. Dr. Lisa Hendricks, the department's consulting psychologist, explained to the investigation team. She believed she was channeling the children's pain into herself through these teeth, objects that naturally fall away as children grow. The ceiling fan represented constant motion, keeping the pain circulating so it wouldn't settle in the children. The case was officially closed in March of the following year. The teeth were returned to families when possible. Those that couldn't be identified were buried in a small ceremony attended by the officers who had worked the case. Marion Wilson sold her sister's house 6 months later. The new owners removed the ceiling fan immediately, replacing it with a modern chandelier. They renovated the entire property, erasing all physical traces of Aliner Beckett's presence. But in Coldwater, parents still occasionally check their children's pillows with extra care after a tooth falls out. And at Coldwater Elementary, the Comfort Corner program continues with new volunteers and stricter oversight. Sometimes, when the classroom grows quiet during art time, a teacher might notice a child drawing a mouth, usually smiling, full of teeth, but sometimes, disturbingly, completely empty inside. Crime 9, 13 doors lined the concrete walls, identical, metal, and perfectly spaced. No knobs, no hinges, only locks on the outside. One had scratch marks bleeding out beneath it. Another had a child's shirt nailed to the center with a message scrawled in marker, "Don't let her answer." Emma Weiler had lived in Millwood, Pennsylvania for nearly 40 years. At 67, she was a fixture in the neighborhood, known for her immaculate front garden and the homemade apple butter she gifted to new families who moved onto Sycamore Street. Her husband Thomas had passed 7 years earlier from lung cancer, leaving Emma alone in the gray colonial they'd purchased together in 1983. The neighbors described Emma as quiet but pleasant. She attended the Methodist church 3 blocks away every Sunday, volunteered at the local library twice a week, and could be seen walking her aging golden retriever, Max, around the block each evening at precisely 6:15. Emma's life followed a comfortable rhythm that rarely deviated, which is why her absence was noticed almost immediately. On Tuesday, October 4th, 2022, Emma didn't appear at the library for her regular shift. The head librarian, Judith Payne, called Emma's home but received no answer. By Wednesday morning, when Emma missed her weekly hair appointment at Curl and Style, her stylist Marion Wilson drove past the house. Emma's car sat in the driveway. The curtains were drawn. Max could be heard barking inside. Marion knocked on the door repeatedly. She tried calling Emma's cell phone and heard it ringing from within the house. She walked around to peer through windows but couldn't see inside. The neighbor across the street, Daniel Cooper, came over when he noticed Marion's concern. "Something's not right," Marion told him. "Emma never misses appointments, and she would never leave Max alone like this." Daniel agreed to call the police for a welfare check. Officer Raymond Dawson arrived 30 minutes later. After knocking and announcing himself with no response, the barking dog and unusual circumstances prompted him to check for entry points. The back door was unlocked, unusual for a woman known to be meticulous about home security. Inside, the house was immaculate, as those who knew Emma would expect. Nothing seemed out of place in the kitchen or living room. Max was in the sunroom, his water bowl nearly empty, his food completely gone. The dog appeared distressed but unharmed. Officer Dawson climbed the stairs and checked the bedrooms. Emma's bed was made, her slippers placed neatly beside it. Her purse sat on the dresser, containing her wallet, identification, and credit cards. Her phone was on the nightstand, plugged into its charger. The bathroom showed no signs of disturbance. It was as if Emma had simply evaporated. As more officers arrived and a formal search began, Detective Lena Harmon noticed something peculiar about the basement door. Unlike the other doors in the house, which featured brass doorknobs that matched the colonial aesthetic, the basement door had been fitted with a heavy-duty deadbolt that appeared much newer than the house itself. The key was not in the lock, nor was it on any key ring they found in the house. After obtaining permission to force entry, the officers broke through the door. The wooden stairs leading down creaked beneath their weight. The basement lights were on. What they discovered defied immediate explanation. The basement had been completely transformed. The concrete walls, once bare according to neighbors who had visited years earlier, now displayed 13 metal doors installed directly into the foundation, all without handles or knobs, each with a heavy-duty lock on the outside. The doors were numbered 1 through 13 in black paint. "I need bolt cutters," Detective Harmon said quietly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. The scratches under door number 3 appeared to have been made by fingernails. The child's t-shirt, size 6X with cartoon dinosaurs, was nailed to door number 7 with the handwritten warning, "Don't let her answer." Door number 9 had what appeared to be dried blood seeping from underneath. When the officers finally opened the first door, they found only a small, empty chamber, approximately 4 feet deep, 3 feet wide, and 7 feet tall. The concrete walls inside were covered with tally marks, hundreds of them, etched into the surface. The second chamber contained only a child's teddy bear, worn with age, sitting upright and facing the door. The third chamber held a collection of women's shoes, all different sizes, arranged in a perfect circle. One by one, they opened the remaining chambers. Some contained strange artifacts, old photographs with faces scratched out, cassette tapes labeled with dates going back to 1991, small personal items like hair clips and eyeglasses. Others were completely empty, the concrete walls pristine as if newly poured. Door number 9 contained a small wooden chair facing the wall. The blood they had seen came from a small puddle beneath the chair, already dried and darkened with time. Emma Weiler was nowhere to be found. The officers sealed off the house as a crime scene. Forensic teams spent days documenting every detail of the basement chambers. The items were cataloged and sent for DNA testing. The blood from door number 9 was confirmed to be human, but results would take time. As investigators dug into Emma's past, contradictions began to surface. Though Emma and Thomas had lived in Millwood since 1983, records of their existence before that were mysteriously sparse. Thomas's employment history showed gaps. Emma's social security number had been issued when she was 27, unusually late. More disturbing was what they found buried in the backyard garden Emma had tended so meticulously. 6 feet down, beneath the prize-winning roses, investigators discovered a metal lockbox containing identification documents for 3 different women, all with Emma's photograph but different names and birth dates. The neighbors were stunned. She was just a nice older lady who made apple butter, Daniel Cooper repeated to reporters who gathered outside the police tape. How could anyone have known? 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Harmon received a call from a detective in Bedford County, Virginia. They had been working a cold case involving the disappearance of 5 children between 1979 and 1982. The primary suspect had been a substitute elementary school teacher named Elaine Winters, who had vanished just before police obtained a search warrant for her home. The photograph they sent matched Emma Weiler. As the investigation expanded, connections to other disappearances across multiple states began to emerge. The items in the basement chambers, the shoes, the teddy bear, the photographs, were being matched to missing persons cases spanning 4 decades. And yet the most perplexing question remained: where was Emma now? The answer came from an unexpected source. Gertrude Weiler, Thomas's sister who lived in Arizona, had not spoken to her brother or sister-in-law for over 30 years following a family dispute. When she learned of the investigation from news reports, she contacted Detective Harmon. "There's another house," Gertrude said quietly over the phone, "a hunting cabin in the mountains. Thomas bought it before I stopped speaking to him. I only visited once, but I never forgot how strange it felt, like the walls were watching us." The cabin, located deep in the Allegheny Mountains, was nearly impossible to find without precise directions. When officers finally located it, they discovered a structure that appeared abandoned for years, covered in vines and surrounded by overgrown forest. Inside, they found 14 metal doors built into the walls. Behind door number 13 was Emma Weiler, alive but unresponsive, sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor. In front of her lay an open notebook filled with neat, methodical handwriting. The final entry, dated October 3rd, read simply, "The doors are talking again. They say it's time to come home." Emma offered no resistance when taken into custody. During questioning, she spoke only once, asking Detective Harmon if they had found the others. When asked who she meant, Emma smiled faintly and whispered, "The ones who answered when I knocked." To this day, investigators continue to identify victims connected to the items found in Emma's basement chambers. The total number remains unknown. Emma Weiler, or Elaine Winters, or whatever her real name might be, has been deemed mentally unfit to stand trial and resides in a secure psychiatric facility. The house on Sycamore Street remains empty, its basement sealed by order of the court. Occasionally, neighbors report hearing sounds from within, like knocking, they say, coming from behind the walls, as if someone is trying to get out. Or perhaps trying to get in. Story 10. The apartment had sat vacant for many moons, its silence echoing through the empty rooms like a lullaby of forgotten whispers. When the new tenants crossed its threshold, Their expectations were as light as the dust that danced in the sunbeams, a few cobwebs, perhaps some abandoned remnants of the past. Yet one door stood stubbornly closed, its secrets locked away behind solid wood and ancient whispers. As the landlord forced the door open with a heavy sigh, a chill crept into the air, sending shivers down their spines. They braced themselves for the mundane sight of old coats or discarded knickknacks, but what greeted them was far from ordinary. The walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, uneven lines that spoke of desperation and confinement. And nestled in the shadows, an old flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message that flickered like a distant star in the night. Detective Morgan Shaw, with her keen eye for the hidden truths that lurked in the shadows, felt a tremor of unease crawl up her spine as she surveyed the scene before her. It wasn't the sight of blood or violence that unsettled her, but the silent plea etched into those wooden walls, a silent cry for help, a battle fought in the dark. "We need forensics now," she murmured to her partner, Officer Reed, who busied himself capturing the haunting marks that scarred the closet walls. "And fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone whispered a chilling accusation. "I know what you did." The landlord, a man of nervous disposition and trembling hands, spoke of the previous tenant in hushed tones, of a young woman who had vanished into the night, leaving behind unpaid rent and unanswered questions. "Quiet type she was, no trouble, or so I thought," he muttered, his gaze avoiding the closet as if afraid of what lurked within. Forensic analysis revealed a tapestry of horror embedded in those scratches, traces of blood that painted a grim picture. Most matched a single soul, presumed to be the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a woman of 28 who had disappeared without a trace. But amidst the familiar DNA, two samples stood out, one a mystery, the other belonging to a man long believed to be dead. Shaw's brow furrowed as she studied the perplexing evidence before her. Derek Mercer, a man declared deceased years prior, now left his mark on the walls of Emma's prison. The pieces of the puzzle began to align in a macabre dance of shadows and secrets, unveiling a story of lives intertwined by darkness. Emma's apartment whispered of a life abruptly halted, of unanswered calls, of a sister left in the dark, of a mysterious lover shrouded in shadows. Surveillance footage painted a grim tableau of a night shrouded in mystery, of a man in a baseball cap stalking the halls like a phantom in the night. The revelation of Derek Mercer's fingerprints on the closet doorknob unraveled a sinister web of deceit and manipulation. He faked his death, Shaw concluded, her voice heavy with the weight of the truth. But why, and what ties him to Emma? The elusive DNA led them down a path of shadows and echoes, to another woman lost in the darkness, Lynette Porter, whose fate had intertwined with Emma's in ways beyond comprehension. Behind closed doors and whispered secrets, they found Lynette, a ghost of her former self, kept in a prison of shadows and whispers. "He made me watch," she whispered, her eyes hollow with the weight of unbearable truths. "He wanted me to see, to understand." The hunt for Derek Mercer spanned far and wide, a shadow looming over the land like a storm on the horizon. His trail of deceit and despair led them to a remote sanctuary of shadows, where his sins lay bare for all to see. As they closed in on their prey, the truth unfurled like a dark flower in bloom, a tapestry of control and manipulation, of souls ensnared in a web of darkness. Mercer's calm demeanor belied the storm that raged within, a tempest of darkness and despair. The trial laid bare the intricate web of lies and deceit that Mercer had spun, a tapestry of shadows that ensnared all who dared to cross his path. Emma's fate, sealed in that closet of horrors, echoed through the courtroom like a silent scream in the night. The jury's verdict rang through the hushed courtroom like a tolling bell, sealing Mercer's fate in shadows and whispers. A life sentence without parole, a fitting end to a man consumed by darkness. As the echoes of justice reverberated through the halls of the court, Lynette Porter stood tall, her voice a beacon of light in the darkness. "He may have locked us in cages of shadows," she declared, her gaze unflinching, "but we will rise, bathed in the light of truth." And so, as the shadows of the past faded into memory, Detective Shaw kept a piece of that haunted closet mounted on her office wall, a reminder of the fragile line between light and darkness, between survival and surrender. Story 11, the apartment exuded an air of antiquity, its age reflected in the groaning heating system and rattling pipes that filled the space with familiar echoes. She had grown accustomed to these sounds, dismissing them as part of the building's charm. Yet on a quiet evening, a subtle shift occurred. A voice, delicate yet unmistakable, drifted through the vents, distinct from the usual background hum. It wasn't the casual chatter of a neighbor, it was a soft whisper, calling her name in a haunting melody. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned closer, pressing her ear against the vent, feeling a chill caress her cheek. And then, almost teasingly, the voice spoke again, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the heart of the empty apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed. The forensics team moved around her methodically, capturing every detail with their cameras as if preserving a moment frozen in time. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace until a week later when a faint odor alerted the building manager to a sinister truth hidden within the walls. Officer Patel, reading from his notes, recounted Alina's distressing claims of voices from the vents that had been dismissed as mere quirks of the aging building. Shaw knelt by the vent, observing the deep scratches surrounding it, evidence of a desperate struggle from within. The scratches told a story of fear and urgency, of someone trapped and seeking escape from an unseen threat. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher known for her radiant smile and thriving houseplants, had exhibited signs of paranoia in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her students had crafted cards in her absence, her sister filing a missing persons report with a heavy heart. During the interview, Alina's sister revealed the haunting truth of her siblings' conviction that unseen eyes watched her every move, whispering through the vents in a chilling symphony. As Shaw delved deeper into the investigation, she uncovered unsettling clues within Alina's apartment. The meticulous arrangement of her belongings, the untouched coffee mug in the sink, and the chair positioned beneath the vent hinted at a presence that lingered in the shadows, listening intently to every breath. The forensic analysis unearthed disturbing revelations, a matching of fibers from the vent with Alina's cardigan, a foreign fingerprint on the inside of the vent cover, and harrowing audio recordings from Alina's phone. Alone in her car, rain tapping a somber rhythm on the roof, Shaw listened to the recordings, each whisper sending shivers down her spine, revealing a dark connection between Alina and an unseen entity that dwelled within the building's walls. The history of the apartment complex cast a shadow of dread over the investigation. Previous tenants had fled in fear, haunted by inexplicable noises and visions. One had even fallen victim to hallucinations induced by carbon monoxide, hearing voices beckoning from the vents, unseen but undeniably present. Harold Weber, the enigmatic building superintendent, emerged as a person of interest. His composed demeanor wavered when questioned about the tenants of apartment 4B, a subtle shift betraying a hidden truth. Shaw sensed a deeper darkness lurking beneath Weber's facade, a malevolent force that thrived on fear and secrecy. The revelation of a concealed access panel in Alina's bathroom, leading to a hidden maintenance passage within the walls, sent chills down Shaw's spine. The discovery of a clandestine lair filled with remnants of lives observed and manipulated revealed the twisted reality of a predator living within the very structure meant to provide shelter. A search of Weber's meticulously maintained apartment uncovered a chilling archive of violation audio recordings, voyeuristic photographs, and a digital journal chronicling his obsession with Alina and previous tenants. Each entry painted a picture of a disturbed mind seeking communion with those he watched, a macabre dance of control and submission. Weber's arrest under the cover of night marked the end of a reign of terror that had plagued the apartment building for years. His serene demeanor and cryptic words hinted at a far-reaching malevolence that transcended mere mortal boundaries. The truth of Alina's fate, of being lured into the labyrinthine vents by a siren's call, brought a sense of closure tinged with lingering unease. As the families of past tenants came forward with their own tales of loss and fear, a pattern of whispered promises, of shadows that moved unseen, of a building that bore witness to unspeakable horrors. Weber's trial, a harrowing testament to human depravity, ended swiftly with a unanimous verdict of guilt. As Weber was escorted away, a chilling smile played on his lips, a final testament to his delusions of grandeur. His words lingered in Shaw's mind, a haunting echo of a darkness that refused to be extinguished. The apartment building, now a hollow shell of its former self, stood as a monument to the unseen forces that lingered within its walls, whispering secrets that would never be silenced. Story 12. The parcel arrived without a return address, devoid of any tracking information. Just a simple cardboard box, slightly damp from the morning mist. It wasn't intended for her. Her address was correct, but the name was a mismatch. She ought to have disregarded it, left it untouched on the doorstep. However, curiosity beckoned. She succumbed. Sarah Miller tore off the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothing. Instead, nestled inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a lone sticky note that read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, sensing an unusual weight to it, as though bearing the burden of something forbidden. Tracing her fingers along the worn edges, she felt the imperfections in the casing. The handwritten note bore the imprint of urgency, each stroke pressed firmly onto the paper. Amidst the backdrop of her suburban neighborhood, with distant sounds of a barking dog and playful children, Sarah stood entranced by the mysterious delivery. Unseen by the outside world, she brought the package indoors, placing it on her kitchen counter. Doubt crept into her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance for her. Having resided in the house for years, she had never received mail addressed to that name. The former residents, the Johnsons, had long departed to be closer to family. Curiosity warred with unease as she eyed her VCR, a relic of nostalgia. Something about the tape beckoned a puzzle veiled in worn plastic. Against her instincts, Sarah inserted the tape into the machine. Static flickered on the screen initially, gradually sharpening into focus. A dimly lit room materialized, illuminated by a single lamp. The camera angle askew, as if hastily placed, revealed a man seated in a wooden chair, his features shrouded by shadows. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," the man's quiet yet resolute voice filled the room. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, which means they will find me too." Leaning forward, he unveiled a face marked by sleepless nights and perpetual vigilance, tired eyes, stubble, disheveled hair. "I am innocent. I need you to believe that. But they have planted evidence, my fingerprints, my DNA, despite never having laid a hand on her." Adjusting the camera, Daniel exposed more of the stark room, a barren space, devoid of comfort, transient in nature. They set me up. The authorities will claim I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses overheard our disputes. None of it is true. I only saw Catherine Walsh's face on the news after her death. His voice trembled. Life extinguished, murdered in her own home, and yet my DNA linked to the crime scene. Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape on her desk, the fifth to emerge. 5 tapes, 5 recipients, all bearing Daniel Whitaker's desperate plea, a man implicated as the prime suspect in Catherine Walsh's murder, now vanished without a trace. Initially, the Walsh case appeared clear-cut. A young professional found strangled in her bedroom, no signs of forced entry, incriminating DNA evidence pointing to Whitaker. Witnesses reported his presence near her residence before the crime. Cell records placed him in the vicinity that fateful night, a straightforward narrative until the tapes surfaced. Updating her case notes, Ramirez recorded, "The tapes complicate matters. Whitaker orchestrates an elaborate ruse or reveals something darker." Surveying the evidence board, smiling photos of Catherine, chilling crime scene snapshots, maps pinpointing delivery locations, and at the core, Whitaker's haunting driver's license photo. His eyes seemed to implore her for justice. An unexpected revelation emerged as Ramirez uncovered Catherine's involvement in blowing the whistle on her employer, PharmaCorp, a potent pharmaceutical entity with governmental ties. Uncovering irregularities in clinical trial data, Catherine had unearthed a cover-up of severe drug side effects. She was set to testify, a former colleague whispered during an interview, casting wary glances. Catherine possessed evidence, proof of executive knowledge and concealment. The trial loomed. Ramirez noted peculiar discrepancies. The DNA evidence seemed too precise, planted in incongruous locations. Witness statements felt rehearsed, echoing identical phrases. Surveillance footage surrounding the crime mysteriously corrupted. Days later, Sarah Miller received a second package. This one contained incriminating documents, clinical reports, internal correspondences, emails, all bearing Catherine's digital signature, validating her claims. The investigation pivoted. Ramirez connected with other recipients, tracing Whitaker's breadcrumb trail. Employed in IT security for a PharmaCorp contractor, he had glimpsed Catherine's flagged name in a forbidden security protocol. They watched her, Whitaker disclosed in a subsequent tape. I witnessed the surveillance orders. They knew she amassed proof. And then I found myself locked out of the system. The next day she was dead and I was framed for her murder. Breakthrough dawned when Sarah noticed a crucial detail in her tape, a reflection in a window revealing a row of storage units. Collaborating with Ramirez, they identified the site. Within Unit 217 lay the truth. Whitaker's journal unveiled the conspiracy, Catherine's original evidence, and damning blueprints authored by PharmaCorp Security had a former detective privy to evidence procedures. Justice prevailed not through dramatic arrests, but through irrefutable evidence. 3 executives faced indictment. The security chief confessed, agreeing to testify against his superiors. The tainted drug withdrew from consideration. Emerging from seclusion, a changed and emaciated Whitaker saw the charges dropped, though the ordeal had etched scars upon him. Meeting Sarah on her porch to retrieve his tape, he responded to her query, "Why me? Why send it to my address?" Weary eyes met hers. "The algorithm chose you. I needed individuals unconnected to Catherine or me, those off the radar, those who might trust their judgment amidst damning allegations." The former suspect and inadvertent witness shared a moment of silent contemplation, realizing the precarious balance between truth and manufactured deceit. Finally, Sarah remarked, "The misdirected parcel turned out to be precisely the right one." The VHS tapes became evidence, tangible reminders that truth arrives in unforeseen packages, bearing unknown names, awaiting the curious to unveil its secrets. Story 13. Renovations always have a way of uncovering hidden secrets. Amongst the dust and debris lie remnants of the past, old newspapers, broken trinkets, forgotten photographs. But for Sarah and Michael, the discovery beneath the floorboards of their Victorian-era home was beyond the ordinary. As they lifted the worn wood, a neatly folded letter emerged, fragile with age, its ink faded but its warning crystal clear. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could process the ominous message, 3 sharp raps reverberated through the silent house, sending shivers down their spines. Intrigued and unsettled, they called upon Detective Alina Reed, an experienced investigator with a keen eye for the mysterious. Together with her partner, they delved into the enigma that had been unearthed. The history of the house was steeped in intrigue, having been owned by the Hargrove family for generations. The last resident, Margaret Hargrove, had lived a solitary existence until her passing, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in mystery. The note, dated 2 decades prior, hinted at hidden fears and untold secrets that lingered within the walls. As Detective Reed pieced together the puzzle, a dark tale of debts, deceit, and desperation began to emerge. Franklin Hargrove, a once respected teacher turned recluse, had fallen into the clutches of a ruthless loan shark known as Victor Mercer. Franklin's refusal to pay his gambling debts had dire consequences, leading to a tragic confrontation that ended in death and deception. Margaret's role in the haunting saga came to light through her diaries, revealing the burden of guilt and fear she carried in silence. The echoes of the past, manifested in the chilling 3 knocks, continued to haunt her even after Franklin's demise. The truth, buried beneath the floorboards, was a testament to the darkness that lurked within the human heart. As the investigation unfolded, the remains of Victor Mercer were finally laid to rest, bringing a semblance of closure to a long-forgotten chapter of betrayal and loss. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's grim history, chose to part ways with the property, leaving it abandoned and empty, a silent witness to the secrets it held. Local whispers spoke of ghostly echoes in the dead of night, a spectral reminder of the past that refused to be forgotten. Detective Reed, in her final report, pondered the lingering mysteries that lingered beyond the reach of logic and reason. Some truths, she mused, are destined to remain shrouded in shadow, their whispers echoing through the corridors of time. And so the house stood silent and still, its secrets buried deep beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek the truth. The letter, a cryptic relic of a bygone era, served as a chilling reminder to heed the warning, "Don't trust the one who knocked." The mystery, like the house itself, remained an enigma, its secrets guarded by the passage of time and the whispers of the past. Story 14. It came in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. A single brass key, weathered with age. The homeowner didn't recognize it, but a strange sense of familiarity washed over her. Trying it in every lock she owned yielded no results. It didn't belong to her. Yet when she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a solitary, eerie chime, despite being silent for years. Sarah Miller, unsettled by the inexplicable event, reported the strange occurrence to the authorities. What seemed like a bizarre mishap soon unraveled into a chilling criminal investigation that sent shockwaves through the tranquil suburban neighborhood. The responding officer, at first, brushed off Sarah's concerns as a mere mailing mishap, but Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later become pivotal to an extensive investigation. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with the Special Victims Unit, received the case file during the morning briefing. As he laid eyes on the unassuming brass key sitting on his desk, a sense of unease crept over him. Background checks on Sarah revealed no criminal history, just a retired high school English teacher, widowed, with grown children living far away. No red flags in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She appeared to be an innocent bystander caught in a sinister web. The forensic team found only Sarah's fingerprints on the key. The envelope revealed no clues, bearing only a generic postmark from a regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself, a standard Schlage, worn and aged. The breakthrough came when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique pattern through the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior matched the key linked to a storage unit where gruesome evidence had been uncovered, but without enough to crack the case. Harmon delved into the dusty case files. The original investigator had retired, the storage unit rented under a false name, paid in cash. Surveillance footage gone, DNA samples partial, no matches in criminal databases. The photos found depicted 5 women, 3 identified but never located. Their cases lingered as suspected homicides. Sarah Miller couldn't recognize any of the women in the pictures, growing increasingly anxious as the investigation progressed, fortifying her home with new locks and security measures. The big question loomed: why send the key to Sarah? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the evidence, leading to a distant familial match in genealogical databases. The trail pointed to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's who had vanished 6 years back. Jenkins, a substitute teacher at Sarah's school, had a shadowy past of sporadic work and frequent moves. Investigations revealed a cabin linked to Jenkins' deceased mother, harboring a chilling secret beneath its floorboards. Inside the concealed room, rows of brass keys were meticulously arranged, each bearing a name and date. 5 keys matched the women from the photos, while 27 hinted at unknown victims. Buried behind the cabin, remains were unearthed, unfolding a nightmarish reality. Sarah was placed under constant protection as the hunt for Jenkins intensified nationwide. Behavioral analysts theorized the key was Jenkins' twisted way of involving Sarah in his dark deeds. Dubbed the Keymaster by the press, fear gripped the community as the manhunt expanded. A wildlife photographer's snapshot led authorities to Jenkins in the wilderness. A standoff ensued, culminating in Jenkins taking his own life, leaving behind a journal detailing his heinous acts. The investigation uncovered 32 victims, bringing closure to grieving families but also unveiling the depth of tragedy. Sarah never returned home, haunted by the proximity of horror to her ordinary life. The grandfather clock's mysterious chime was revealed to be Jenkins' surveillance, waiting for Sarah's reaction to his gift. The case stands as a stark reminder of the darkness lurking behind seemingly normal exteriors. Researchers study Jenkins' writings in hopes of preventing similar atrocities, and in an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys silently speaks of lives lost, a haunting truth about the hidden depths of evil that can lurk amongst us. Story 15. The wooden plank shifted beneath her foot, catching her attention with a subtle creak. She knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the loose board, sensing a hidden space below. Gently she lifted the plank, revealing a dark, mysterious chamber beneath her new home. Dust danced in the faint light that filtered through the floorboards, revealing forgotten secrets that lay undisturbed for years. As Sarah Coleman peered into the shadows, Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind her, her presence a comforting anchor in the unsettling discovery. The air in the hidden room held a stillness that whispered of long-forgotten whispers and unseen eyes watching. The room held a mattress, a chair, and a tattered notebook, its pages filled with the repetition of Sarah's own name, a haunting echo of obsession. Detective Reed's voice, calm yet firm, broke the silence, cautioning Sarah not to disturb anything further in the hidden chamber. With a click, the flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating walls adorned with surveillance photos capturing every moment of Sarah's life, moments she thought were private, now laid bare in this secret shrine of voyeurism. The cottage, once charming and filled with potential, now harbored a darkness that Sarah could not fathom. The previous owner, Walter Green, a solitary figure in the neighborhood, had left behind more than just a property. He had left behind a twisted legacy of surveillance and fixation. The crime scene investigators arrived, their steps echoing on the wooden floors as they meticulously documented every detail of the hidden room. They retrieved the mattress, the chair, and the notebook, each item holding a piece of Walter's disturbing obsession with Sarah. Forensic analysis revealed a timeline of Walter's fixation, spanning years of silent observation and meticulous planning. The realization that a stranger had been watching her every move sent shivers down Sarah's spine, a chill that no amount of sunlight could dispel. The investigation took a chilling turn when Detective Reed uncovered a key in Walter's workplace locker, leading them to a storage unit filled with replicas of Sarah's previous life, a twisted shrine to a love that existed only in Walter's disturbed mind. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became clear that Walter's obsession with Sarah stemmed from a deep-rooted delusion, a belief in a connection that existed only in his own troubled psyche. His death had halted his plans, but the scars of his fixation remained, etched into the walls of the hidden chamber. Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, a sanctuary tainted by the shadows of Walter's twisted fantasies. As she stood in the empty living room, her heart heavy with what could have been, she knew that she could never truly erase the memory of the hidden room beneath her feet. The case was closed, but the echoes of Walter's obsession lingered, a reminder of the dangers that lurked unseen in the world. Sarah moved on, carrying the weight of Walter's ghostly presence with her, a silent guardian watching over her from afar. The cottage found new owners, unaware of the darkness that had once dwelled within its walls. The hidden room was sealed off, the floorboards replaced, but the memory of Walter's obsession lingered, a cautionary tale of the fragile line between safety and danger, between reality and delusion. Story 16, the town hushed any whispers about the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows veiled in darkness, its porch burdened by the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. Yet when a band of wanderers strayed too near, they glimpsed an oddity, names etched into the wooden siding, carved deep like silent warnings. At the base of the roster, fresh and untouched, was a name foreign to them all. Until a tremulous voice broke the stillness, "That name belongs to me." The call came under the shroud of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice on the line belonged to Mason Wright, the head of the group, who stumbled upon his own name etched into the deserted abode. The responding officers anticipated mere mischief, perhaps a jest among comrades, but what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight draped the forest. Her flashlight pierced the obscurity, revealing the weathered face of the structure. The names 27 in all cascaded vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded into obscurity, nearly vanishing against the aged wood. Others remained sharp as if freshly carved, and at the end, Mason Wright, the incision still fragrant with the scent of freshly hewn wood. "I've never set foot here before," Mason affirmed, his breath materializing in the frigid air. "I cannot fathom how anyone knows my name." The inquiry commenced with scrutinizing each name on the list. The findings sent shivers through the investigative team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing in the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others remained open, but all shared a chilling similarity: the vanished had been lone hikers. Forensic experts meticulously photographed each inscription, noting the variations in depth, techniques, and weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years prior. The records depicted a young lady who ventured into these woods and never resurfaced. Search parties unearthed naught but a lone hiking boot beside a babbling brook. Detective Keller delved into Mason's background extensively. His narrative remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the locale beyond this trek with 4 college companions. They had chosen the trail at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his history linked him to any of the other names on the wall. The focus then shifted to Mason's comrades. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots from their journey. Upon scrutinizing the images, analysts unearthed a disquieting detail: a blurred figure lurking in the backdrop of 3 separate photographs. The silhouette resembled a slender, towering man, perpetually obscured by foliage. "We encountered no one else on the path," Emily insisted. "We would have surely noticed." Detective Keller sanctioned a search of the house's interior. The edifice appeared forsaken. Dust cloaked every surface. Furniture lay in disarray. Yet in the depths of the basement, officers stumbled upon a harrowing tableau. Personal effects belonging to the vanished hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a name corresponding to those etched outside. Technicians meticulously cataloged each item. Under ultraviolet light, bloodstains materialized on the concrete floor, years of blemishes someone had attempted to erase. Despite ground-penetrating radar yielding no bodies beneath the house, cadaver dogs persistently alerted near the densely wooded rear of the property. As the probe intensified, Detective Keller observed peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began reporting eerie incidents: whispers outside his dwelling, footprints in fresh snow leading to his doorstep but not away, specters observing from the street. The department assigned an officer to safeguard him, yet Mason's paranoia escalated. The breakthrough arrived when researchers exhumed land records buried in county archives. The dwelling had belonged to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, emaciated man who shunned conversation. Blackwood vanished without a trace. 15 years passed, his disappearance never officially pursued. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the encompassing forest. The search party unearthed an array of crude hunting blinds strategically situated along favored hiking trails. Within one blind lay a journal detailing meticulous observations, accounts of hikers, their pathways, gear, and behaviors. The script mirrored samples from Victor Blackwood's scant documents. The journal entries grew increasingly unsettling over time. Initial pages delineated hunting tactics for fauna. Subsequent entries portrayed humans as quarry their routines, vulnerabilities, and strategies for their acquisition. The last pages contained intricate chronicles of stalking each victim on the wall, including elaborate depictions of how he singled out his prey. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical squads meticulously combed every crevice and hollow, yet no trace of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased answering calls. Officers dispatched to his dwelling discovered the entrance ajar, the chambers vacant. On his bedroom wall, freshly carved, was a solitary inscription: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason persisted for weeks to no avail. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's residence, forensic specialists unearthed a ghastly revelation. Concealed behind a false partition in the basement lurked a small workshop housing woodworking tools, vats of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a novel name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the chief forensic technician who had processed the residence during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and remained unreachable by phone. Authorities erected an unceasing surveillance perimeter around the property. Camera systems documented every approach. Motion detectors monitored for trespassers. The trap was set. 3 nights later, alarms sounded. Surveillance footage captured a figure emerging from the woods, unfathomably tall and gaunt, moving with an uncanny fluidity. The figure advanced toward the house, seemingly unfazed by the surveillance. As tactical units closed in, the cameras momentarily lost connection. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished. The house endures under constant watch to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never recovered. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as akin disappearances surface in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have become a legend among law enforcement. Some officers shun speaking them aloud, others evade the case entirely. And local hikers now steer clear of the house, fearful that even mentioning it might consign their names to that dreaded list, the names unspoken by all. Story 17. The tale of a forgotten name whispered through the layers of time unfolded before the unsuspecting hands of Michael and Sarah Klein. Their journey into the depths of a Victorian-era home, steeped in mystery, began with a simple water stain that unveiled a hidden narrative woven within the walls. As the charming old residence beckoned them with its ornate woodwork and high ceilings, a yellowish discoloration on the floral wallpaper in the master bedroom caught Sarah's attention. What started as just peeling wallpaper led them on a descent through decades of history, each layer revealing a piece of a haunting puzzle. Beneath the floral patterns of the 1970s and the striped paper of a bygone era, a name emerged: Alina Winters. Scrawled in ink, repeated in a frenzy across the wall, the name held a weight of secrets long buried. Sarah's fingers traced the desperate handwriting, a silent question hanging in the air: who was Alina Winters? Their search for answers led them down a digital rabbit hole, where a missing persons case from 30 years past intersected with their present reality. The missing woman, Alina Winters, bore a striking resemblance to Margaret Cavendish, the enigmatic woman who had sold them the house. Curiosity transformed into obsession as Michael and Sarah delved deeper into the shadows of the past. Contacting previous homeowners and unearthing hidden spaces within the house, they uncovered a tangled web of identities and a chilling connection to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge. Rebecca, consumed by a severe dissociative identity disorder, had assumed the persona of Alina Winters after her disappearance. The scrawled name on the wall became a haunting echo of her fractured mind, a desperate attempt to cling to reality amidst the chaos of her alternate identities. Forensic teams descended upon their home, unearthing long-buried truths hidden beneath the floorboards and within the walls. Ground-penetrating radar guided their search, leading to the discovery of Alina Winters' remains in the backyard, a grim confirmation of a cold case brought back to life. Rebecca Eldridge, masquerading as Margaret Cavendish, was apprehended as she attempted to flee, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in the face of irrefutable evidence. The walls of the house bore witness to a tragedy decades in the making, a tale of obsession, identity, and ultimate betrayal. As justice finally caught up with the echoes of the past, Michael and Sarah's dream home became a haunting memory, forever etched in the annals of true crime history. The walls themselves whispered of a long-forgotten name, a story of love turned to obsession, and a mystery that had finally found its resolution in the quiet of the night. Story 18, the quaint costume shop was in its final hours, clearing out its old treasures. Among the forgotten items, a woman's eyes landed on a mask resting on a dusty shelf. Its delicate features held an uncanny resemblance to life, sending a shiver down her spine. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated, uttering softly, "That's not ours." Bewildered, she checked for a tag, but none was found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take it home. That night, a soft, rustling sound stirred her from slumber. The whisper of fabric moving. The mask, once perched on her dresser, had vanished. In its place on her nightstand, it sat facing her, an eerie presence in the dimly lit room. The woman, Catherine Reed, was later discovered by her concerned neighbor. The front door ajar, the morning light spilling into the stillness of the darkened house. Expecting a simple book return, the neighbor stumbled upon a chilling scene that would perplex investigators for years to come. Catherine lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, the mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived at the somber scene as forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic clicks of shutters echoed amidst hushed conversations. "No signs of forced entry," remarked an officer, jotting notes in his pad. The detective's keen eyes scanned the room, noticing subtle nuances others overlooked. A slightly ajar drawer, a water glass with a lipstick-stained rim on the nightstand. Everything seemed ordinary, except for the woman who would never awaken. The medical examiner, with a solemn expression, noted the uncertainty of the cause of death upon initial examination. No visible wounds, no signs of a struggle. Gesturing towards Catherine's face, he pointed out the frozen expression of terror etched on her features. Leaning in for a closer observation, the detective whispered, "Something frightened her to her demise." Catherine, known for her meticulous work as an art appraiser, possessed a keen eye for authenticity. Colleagues praised her ability to spot forgeries effortlessly. She could detect the slightest irregularity, her boss mentioned during interviews. The detective pondered if her discerning talent had somehow led her to this tragic end. Surveillance footage from the costume shop offered a peculiar clue. The cashier's genuine perplexity over the mask raised suspicions. Consulting the shop owner, it was confirmed that such a mask was never part of their inventory. Visiting the now empty shop, the detective probed the owner, who nervously revealed the mask's mysterious appearance during a clearance sale. It had no origin traceable within their records. A breakthrough emerged when forensics unearthed microscopic fibers on Catherine's fingertips. She was grasping onto something, the lab technician explained. Unusual fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic material defying identification. This discovery unveiled a trail of similar deaths spanning decades, each victim acquiring a peculiar mask before facing a demise frozen in terror, each case unsolved. A retired detective who had delved into a similar case shared an unsettling revelation. Inside each mask, concealed behind the lining, were ancient symbols hinting at a ritual involving soul transference. His trembling hands pushed a weathered file towards the current detective, shedding light on a dark truth. A hidden journal found in Catherine's apartment revealed her escalating fear. Sensing a malevolent presence, she connected the mask to a series of enigmatic deaths. Her frantic entries detail the mask's eerie movements and its insidious intent to claim a new host once recognized. The detective pieced together the puzzle, the enigmatic fibers, Catherine's findings, the recurring pattern of terror-stricken deaths. The medical examiner's final verdict, cardiac arrest induced by extreme fear, raised haunting questions. What terror could halt a heart with such intensity? Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor's camera unveiled a chilling sight: a figure, donned in a mask resembling Catherine, moving mechanically, a distorted mimicry of her movements. An alert was issued for the missing mask, yet it remained elusive until reports surfaced 6 months later. A vintage shop across the country briefly housed the peculiar mask before it vanished into anonymity, sold to an unknown buyer. The case lingered unresolved, a sinister enigma shrouded in mystery. The detective safeguarded Catherine's journal, a silent testament to a reality too bizarre for official records. In the dead of night, she would jolt awake, a sense of being watched gnawing at her. Securing her windows and doors, she pushed aside thoughts of the malevolent mask, awaiting its next unwitting victim. The vessel of ancient evil, moving stealthily from one life to the next in an unending cycle that began eons ago and persists to this day. The mask lingers, awaiting its rediscovery. And when it resurfaces, another soul will awaken to the faint rustle of ominous movement in the shadows, the empty gaze fixated on them, hungry for the essence behind their eyes. Story 19. The aged envelope, its corners tinged with a soft yellow hue, bore a fresh stamp, as if it had just embarked on its journey days ago. Delicately, the detective unfolded it, revealing a lone sheet of paper adorned with hurriedly typed words: "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a dampness, carrying with it a faint scent of iron that lingered in the air. It was then, with a sense of intrigue, that the detective noticed a reddish smear along the bottom edge of the paper, a stain that was unmistakably not ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, with her gloved hands, carefully placed the letter into an evidence bag, her movements precise and practiced. The forensics team had already confirmed her suspicions. The reddish mark was human blood, and it matched the DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had cast a long shadow over the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, the scene marred by multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes strewn across the floor, hinting that the violence might have been linked to an investigative piece she was pursuing. Despite exhaustive efforts, countless interviews, and tireless investigation, the case had grown cold. And now this enigmatic letter had found its way to the police department, simply addressed to the Homicide Division. Scant fingerprints graced the paper and envelope, mere smudges indicating the sender's precaution in wearing gloves. The postmark, however, provided a glimmer of hope, a thread to follow in the darkness that had shrouded the case for so long. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan adorned the walls with images of crime scenes, timelines, and profiles of suspects who had led them down dead-end paths. Placing the letter at the heart of the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our killer is burdened with remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner since the case's inception, scrutinized the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they wish us to believe so," he suggested. "The blood could be a macabre performance, a taunt." The forensics team traced the distinct typewriter impressions to a model long out of production, a relic of the past, uncommon yet not unattainable. They embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique shops and collectors far and wide. As the investigation gained traction, they delved into Rebecca's life. Her editor painted a portrait of a determined soul, unyielding in her pursuit of truth and justice. Her final assignment had delved into the murky waters of a prominent family entangled in local politics. With the patriarch's recent passing, a contentious inheritance dispute had unfurled. with siblings pointing accusatory fingers at each other. Turning their focus to Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, the detectives uncovered subtle shifts in his demeanor upon mention of the letter, a nervous energy, a tremor in his voice. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed, his gaze fixed on a distant memory. I dismissed it as paranoia stemming from her investigation. I should have listened. While exploring this light, a second letter materialized, bearing the same typewritten message, the same crimson stain. This time the words extended. She unearthed too many secrets about the family, about the inheritance, about what transpired with the patriarch. I never intended for it to escalate. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, resided. Among his collection of antiquities lay several vintage typewriters. His responses to their inquiries appeared rehearsed, polished, a facade crumbling under scrutiny. The breakthrough arrived when microscopic fibers on the envelopes were traced back to custom stationery exclusive to the youngest daughter, Eleanor. Confronted, she disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery weeks prior. A search of Richard's abode unveiled a concealed chamber, housing clippings of Rebecca, surveillance materials, and a vintage typewriter mirroring the one used for the letters. DNA analysis confirmed the blood's origin, Rebecca herself. Unforeseen was the financial tie between Richard and Michael, revealed through bank records showing substantial transactions preceding Rebecca's tragic demise. Confronted with the truth, Michael's resolve shattered. Rebecca had uncovered evidence of Richard's treachery in hastening his father's demise for personal gain, he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. I relayed her findings to Richard, hoping to dissuade her. I never foresaw her tragic fate. The final puzzle piece emerged as Eleanor presented a clandestine recording capturing Richard and Michael plotting against Rebecca. Richard's damning words rang out. She must be silenced permanently. Attempting to flee, Richard was apprehended and detained. The prosecution built a formidable case around the letters, the typewriter, the financial transactions, and Eleanor's crucial recording. Striking a deal, Michael offered his testimony in exchange for leniency. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, shifting blame onto Michael, alleging a setup. Yet the weight of evidence proved insurmountable. The jury swiftly returned a verdict of guilt after deliberating for a mere day. As Richard was escorted away, shackled and defeated, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents in the courtroom. Words could not resurrect their daughter, but the verdict ushered in a sliver of solace. The blood-stained letters found their resting place in evidence storage, a haunting reminder that even the most meticulously crafted crimes leave a trail, and that contrition, be it genuine or a facade, can unravel the schemes of those who believe they have mastered the art of deception. The tale of Rebecca Warren transcended into a cautionary lesson for fledgling detectives, illustrating that breakthroughs oftentimes stem not from modern marvels, but from relics of the past and the burden of guilt weighing heavy on a killer's heart. Story 20. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time within the walls of the house. Among its contents were faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and togetherness from years long past. Each photo told a story of normalcy, of innocence, until her fingers brushed against the final image. In that last snapshot, taken in her own living room, a sense of unease crept into Rebecca's mind. The family in the picture, with their warm smiles frozen in time, seemed familiar yet foreign, as if plucked from a parallel reality. And there, in the shadows beyond them, a figure loomed, a man, watching from the hallway with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Descending the creaking staircase, Rebecca carried the photo to the stark light of the kitchen, where the uncanny resemblance between her surroundings and those captured in the picture became unmistakable. The detective, a man of few words and keen observation, arrived clad in a worn leather jacket that whispered of past investigations. With a steady hand, he examined the photo, his gaze piercing through the layers of mystery that cloaked the house and its secrets. As Detective Morgan delved into the history of the property, a pattern emerged, a dark thread woven through the tapestry of time. Families had come and gone, leaving no trace of their existence after precisely 1 year of residence. The Sutherlands, the missing link in the chain of enigmatic disappearances, had left behind a void that no one could fill. And at the heart of it all stood Samuel Whitfield, a spectral figure from the past whose presence lingered in the shadows of the house he had built. The truth lay buried beneath the concrete floor of the basement, where the remains of the missing families were unearthed, frozen in a macabre tableau of eternal silence. The camera, a silent witness to their final moments, held the key to unlocking the mysteries that had haunted the house for decades. And in the hidden recesses of the attic, a chilling discovery awaited: a secret chamber, a shrine to obsession, where Whitfield's legacy of darkness lived on. Retreating to the safety of a hotel room, Rebecca found no solace in the fleeting respite from the encroaching shadows of the past. The phone call in the dead of night, the mechanical click of a camera capturing her every move, served as a grim reminder that the legacy of Samuel Whitfield was far from over. The house, now a monument to unspeakable horrors, stood as a sentinel of the unknown, its windows staring out into a world where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. And so the investigation continued, a dance of shadows and light, of truth and deception, as the enigma of Samuel Whitfield remained unsolved. His presence, a specter haunting the edges of consciousness, whispered of a legacy that transcended time and space. For those who dared to seek the truth, to unravel the web of lies that bound them to the house, the price of discovery was a steep one, a descent into darkness from which there might be no return. And as new families moved in, unaware of the eyes that watched from the shadows, the cycle of fear and fascination continued, a testament to the enduring power of a man lost to the annals of history. Story 21. In a small town shrouded in whispers and faded memories, a house stood untouched by time. Its walls held the echo of a young woman's disappearance, a mystery woven into the very fabric of its being. Neighbors spoke of her vanishing, of how the house remained silent and still ever since. When new tenants dared to cross the threshold, they were met with a bedroom locked from within, a sanctuary frozen in time. With trembling hands, they forced the door open, breaking the seal of solitude that had lingered for so long. The air inside was thick with neglect, dust dancing in the dim light, but there was an unsettling presence, a whisper of the unknown. Upon entering, they found the room in eerie perfection. The bed neatly made, the mirror polished to a gleam. A solitary candle, its flame extinguished long ago, stood as a sentinel on the desk, its wax a frozen testament to forgotten moments. And there, on the open notebook, words penned with a sense of foreboding. Detective Morgan, a shadow among shadows, delved into the depths of the notebook's secrets while the room was combed for traces of the past. The inked words belonged to Elise Winters, a ghostly figure from years gone by, her voice echoing through the faded pages. Her writing spoke of watching eyes, of a creeping sense of danger that lurked in the shadows. As the investigation unfolded, a tapestry of Elise's life unfurled before them. A paralegal entangled in a web of deceit, her world unraveling in the wake of corporate treachery. Colleagues whispered of her late nights, of the truths she uncovered in the darkness of the firm's secrets. The room held its secrets close, revealing little of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. No signs of struggle, no crimson stains to mark the passage of violence, just a quiet emptiness, a void waiting to be filled with answers. But answers did come, hidden in the shadows of a hidden compartment, a key to unlock the truth buried beneath layers of deception. Documents whispered of betrayal, of falsified data and lives lost in the pursuit of profit. Elise's voice, a beacon in the darkness, exposed the sins of the powerful, their crimes laid bare for all to see. As the truth emerged, a web of lies began to unravel, leading to the doorstep of a man cloaked in shadows. Vincent Harriman, a puppet master of corruption, found himself ensnared in the web of justice that Elise had woven in her final moments. Through hidden passages and forgotten truths, the mystery of the locked room unfurled like a flower in the darkness. Harriman's descent into darkness was swift, his denials falling on deaf ears as the evidence mounted against him. In the end, justice prevailed, a silent victory for a woman lost to the shadows. Elise's room, a shrine to her sacrifice, stood as a testament to the power of truth in a world shrouded in lies. The house, a silent witness to the darkness that lurked within, stood empty once more, a beacon of remembrance in a town haunted by secrets. And so the tale of Elise Winters faded into legend, a whispered memory in the night. The house remained, a silent sentinel against the tide of time, its secrets laid bare but never truly forgotten. And in the quiet hours of the night, a faint light flickered in the window, a ghostly reminder of a woman who refused to be silenced by the darkness. Story 22. The coffee shop had been his sanctuary for endless mornings, same table, same order, same silent companionship with his thoughts. The barista recognized his presence, yet his identity remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day he didn't arrive. When law enforcement investigated his customary spot, they stumbled upon a forgotten wallet. Within its confines lay a driver's license bearing a face without a name, an address a void where his essence should have resided. Reviewing the security footage, Detective Sarah Mercer observed an enigma unfold before her eyes. The figure, now dubbed John Doe in the records, appeared like any other patron on screen. Average in stature, unassuming in appearance, clad in a navy coat and shouldering a weathered leather bag, yet his vanishing act defied logic. "Replay it," Mercer requested of the tech specialist. The footage unveiled John's entrance during the bustling morning hours. He placed his usual order, black coffee, no sugar, and settled at the secluded corner table, shielded by a leafy plant. Engrossed in his notebook, he would occasionally glance out the window, sipping his coffee in solitude. Then came the pivotal moment. Placing his wallet on the table, he rose and strolled towards the restroom corridor. But he never reappeared. He never departed through any exit. He simply dissolved into the unknown. "Examine the restroom footage," Mercer urged. "Here's the thing," the specialist hesitated. "He never set foot in any restroom. We've scrutinized every angle, yet it's as though he evaporated into thin air." Back at the precinct, Mercer sifted through the wallet's contents sprawled across her desk. The driver's license photo mirrored their enigmatic guest, but vital particulars were absent, replaced by barren spaces. Credit cards bore no names, only cryptic numbers that led to non-existent accounts when traced. Neatly stacked cash, a dated receipt from the coffee shop, and a solitary business card devoid of any information except a faintly printed phone number. Upon dialing, silence greeted Mercer, punctuated by the rustle of paper hinting at unseen movements. The barista, a witness to John's silent presence over the years, offered scant details. He was reserved, always courteous, tipped generously. I believe he had an accent, but his voice was hushed, hard to discern. "Did he engage with anyone here? Converse?" Mercer inquired. "Never, always alone, engrossed in his writing." The notebook, a cryptic enigma, lay open beside the abandoned wallet. its pages adorned with what seemed like encrypted messages or codes. Department cryptographers grappled to decipher its secrets. Amongst the scribbles lay architectural sketches of unfamiliar structures in the vicinity. Mercer dispatched officers with John Doe's images, yet no recognition surfaced. No missing persons report aligned with his description. His fingerprints eluded all databases, confining his existence to the coffee shop's realm. Amidst her inquiries, Mercer discerned an anomaly in the security recordings. Each morning, as John entered the establishment, the camera's timestamp flickered momentarily. Dismissed as a glitch by the tech specialist, Mercer harbored doubts. Returning to the coffee shop, she occupied his favored table. From this vantage point, she observed the entrance and the corridor to the restrooms, bridged by an ancient mirror adorned with symbols reminiscent of John's notebook. Inquiring the shop owner about the mirror, Mercer unraveled its enigmatic history. "It's been here since time immemorial," came with the building. "Weighty as sin requires two to shift it. Has it ever been relocated? For cleaning, perhaps. Not in my tenure. Why do you ask?" Mercer approached the mirror, studying her reflection. A subtle distortion lent her mirrored image an uncanny depth. Expecting chilly glass, she was met with an unusual warmth upon contact. The forensics unit, upon inspecting the mirror, uncovered a concealed compartment behind it. Within resided a trove of identical wallets, each housing a driver's license with a nameless face. Alongside, a leather-bound journal chronicling entries spanning decades, scribed in the same hand as the notebook left behind. Final entry forewarned, the experiment nears its conclusion. They draw closer. The window wanes. Traces of John Doe's fingerprints ornamented the covert space. The earliest wallet, carbon dated at 50 years, depicted an unaltered countenance. The journal alluded to experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, hinting at crossing back and window points. Of note was a passage. "The coffee shop acts as a nexus, a juncture of realities. The mirror serves as the portal. When alignments converge, passage beckons." As the probe delved deeper, peculiar incidents unfurled around the coffee shop. Patrons reported spectral reflections in the window glass, sightings of John Doe seated at his customary table, though surveillance cameras refuted their claims. The breakthrough emerged with the arrival of Margaret Keller, an elderly physicist with a clandestine past. She identified John Doe as Daniel Weston, a revered physicist vanishing amidst quantum mirror experiment surfaces theorized to facilitate interreality transits. Keller unveiled documents indicating Weston's supposed demise following a lab mishap, aligning with the journal's earliest entry. "He posited our reality as one of many coexisting," Keller elaborated. "Certain points, like the coffee shop, serve as rifts between these realms, gateways for traversal." Armed with this revelation, Mercer revisited the coffee shop. The edifice stood atop the former research facility where Weston had vanished into the ether. The climax unfurled as Mercer, engrossed in nocturnal surveillance, unearthed a clandestine detail overlooked in prior viewings. Reflected in the mirror, she beheld a duality. John Doe Daniel Weston observing his seated self. Two facets of the same entity, coexisting in the fractured reality. Hastening to the coffee shop, Mercer encountered a shattered mirror with a final missive inscribed in the familiar hand. "The experiment concludes. The passage seals. Do not pursue." The case of the Phantom Man remains a mystery etched in the annals. The coffee shop shuttered post-investigation. The structure razed eventually. Weston's remains eluded discovery, his works vanishing from evidence custody under enigmatic circumstances. Mercer, relinquishing her badge, is glimpsed by neighbors, fervently transcribing in a notebook akin to Weston's. A fragment of the antique mirror adorns her wall, its surface at times rippling in unseen currents. Story 23, The aged library faced its fate of demolition, its walls echoing with the imminent destruction. As the workers diligently carried out their tasks, one of them, lost in the rhythm of their work, stumbled upon a hidden latch nestled within the ancient bookshelf. With a gentle push, a soft click filled the air, and the entire bookcase swung open, revealing a narrow passageway that led to a clandestine chamber. The air within the hidden room was heavy, thick with the weight of time that had passed undisturbed. There was no furniture except for a solitary chair stationed at the center, its frame bolted securely to the floor, and etched repeatedly on the walls in a haunting repetition was a chilling message: "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing the gravity of the discovery, swiftly radioed for the police. What had begun as a routine demolition now veered into the realm of the unknown, shrouded in mystery and foreboding. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, arrived at the scene, his keen eyes taking in the eerie sight before him. Standing in the doorway of the hidden room, his flashlight pierced the darkness, casting long shadows that danced across the walls covered in the unsettling phrase. "Secure the scene," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the confined space. "Let no one disturb anything until forensics arrives." The history of the building whispered tales of intrigue and tragedy. Once owned by the esteemed Harrington family, the library had been bequeathed to the public following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year of college, she left behind no trace except for her abandoned car near the forest's edge. Despite exhaustive searches and inquiries, the mystery of her whereabouts remained unsolved, leaving her family in a perpetual state of grief and uncertainty. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, traces of hair and fibers were unearthed from the aged chair. The scratches on the walls bore faint remnants of blood and skin cells, hinting at a tumultuous struggle that had taken place within those walls long ago. The chair was designed for restraint, the forensic analyst observed, pointing to the worn leather straps and bolt holes. Whoever was confined here fought fiercely against their captivity. Walsh, driven by a sense of duty and curiosity, delved deeper into the enigmatic past of the Harrington family. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance raised suspicions that could not be ignored. Further revelations uncovered a disturbing connection. The contractor responsible for installing the bookshelf had ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records hinted at unusual transactions, with payments to the contractor exceeding standard renovation costs by a significant margin. Former library staff expressed shock at the hidden chamber's existence, with one elderly librarian recalling Maxwell's peculiar insistence on preserving that section of the building untouched during renovations. The investigation took a harrowing turn when DNA evidence from the hidden room matched samples from Rebecca's personal belongings. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, painting a grim picture of betrayal and captivity within the family's own walls. With a warrant in hand, detectives descended upon the Harrington estate, unearthing a leather-bound journal concealed in Maxwell's study. Its pages chronicled a disturbing obsession with his niece, culminating in a chilling admission of guilt and desperation. She discovered the truth, Maxwell confessed in a moment of stark clarity. "I couldn't let her ruin everything. The room was meant to contain her, not end her life." The truth, once buried beneath layers of deceit and denial, emerged with chilling clarity. Maxwell had lured Rebecca to the library, imprisoned her in the hidden chamber, and ultimately silenced her in a desperate bid to protect his own secrets. Excavation beneath the floorboards of the hidden room revealed Rebecca's remains, clad in the silver bracelet that had adorned her wrist on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family, torn asunder by the revelations, bore witness to the reckoning of justice as Maxwell faced his sentence for his heinous crimes. The library, once slated for destruction, now stood as a solemn monument to a life lost and a truth uncovered. Flowers adorned its entrance, a quiet tribute to a soul that had endured captivity and betrayal with a resilience that echoed through the ages. In the final act of the tragic tale, Rebecca's whispered plea, "I am still here," etched into the walls, ensured that her memory would endure, a haunting reminder that justice, though delayed, would always find its way to the light. And as the shadows of the past dissolved into the night, the old library stood silent, a sentinel of secrets finally laid to rest. Story 24. The aged apartment held its secrets, pipes that sighed, floorboards that whispered tales of the past, but the new resident sensed a difference in the sounds echoing through the walls. The footsteps above were too purposeful, too controlled. They danced down from a phantom realm, measured and deliberate, yet she dwelled on the highest floor. One evening, emboldened by curiosity and a touch of fear, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The footsteps halted. A hush descended, pregnant with anticipation. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the peculiar incident to herself, attributing the noises to the settling of the building, or perhaps a misplaced critter seeking refuge in the attic. Despite the nightly procession of footsteps above, she adjusted her routine, drowning out the rhythmic cadence with heightened television volumes, cocooning her ears in headphones, anything to cloak the methodical footfalls that sketched unseen paths across her ceiling in the shroud of darkness. Detective Morris stumbled upon the apartment's enigmatic narrative when a maintenance worker unearthed a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Removing a section of drywall outside Sarah's dwelling to mend a leak, the worker unearthed a narrow passage unaccounted for in the building's blueprints. Illuminated by a flashlight's beam, a clandestine living quarters materialized scattered food remnants, discarded water vessels, a soiled blanket, and a tattered notebook. The superintendent swiftly summoned the authorities. Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker pallid and trembling. "There's someone dwelling within the walls," he repeated like a chilling mantra. "Someone has been observing." Within the notebook lay meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily rhythms, her guests, her evening repasts, her chosen shows, the timing of her ablutions, her slumber. The script commenced with precision but evolved into erratic scrawls towards the final pages, cryptic symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer acknowledges my presence," the ultimate entry lamented. "She has elected to disregard me. None can ignore me." Forensic teams combed the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints alien to any database. A labyrinth of hidden passages snaked through the building's walls and ceilings, some harking back decades according to structural analysis. These covert conduits linked to 5 distinct apartments, but terminated in observation points, minute apertures camouflaged as innocuous fixtures or minor blemishes in a sole location: Sarah Coleman's abode. Interviews with present occupants yielded nothing beyond the banal sounds of communal living. Former denizens, however, whispered a divergent narrative. 3 predecessors of Sarah's residence recounted sensations of being surveilled or inexplicable rustlings. One had hastily vacated after a mere fortnight. None had voiced their encounters, gripped by a fear of sounding paranoid. A breakthrough emerged when forensic scrutiny unearthed minuscule blood specks within a crawl space. DNA analysis linked the traces to Martin Weaver, a vanished ex-resident from 4 years past. Though his kin had reported him missing, the inquiry had frozen in stagnation. Martin had dwelled directly beneath Sarah's apartment. Revisiting Martin's disappearance, Detective Morris learnt of his grievances concerning noises from above. Confronting the quiet lodger residing overhead Edward, a recluse, the disturbances ceased. Shortly thereafter, Martin vanished, and Edward absconded the ensuing month, leaving no forwarding details. A pattern emerged as investigators traced Edward's rental trajectory. Inhabitants of 6 different buildings over 2 decades, Edward habitually sought topmost abodes, eschewing social interactions before vanishing without trace. A resident from his 3rd abode recalled him as intense, forever lamenting his need for silence. Property records unveiled Edward's acquisition of secluded rural property. The ensuing investigation uncovered a cabin festooned with photographs and notations, images of residents from myriad apartment complexes, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, schematics of ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities, journals detailing specimen observations and habitat preservation. At the cabin's core stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings, missing person bulletins, 6 in total, all former dwellers from Edward's residences. Grooves on the wooden floor beneath the board hinted at a weight dragged repeatedly. Behind the cabin, cadaver canines led investigators to freshly disturbed soil. Excavation yielded human remains and more graves. Anthropologists commenced the somber task of identifying the fallen. Returning to Sarah's domicile, the crawl spaces sealed. Reports persisted of intermittent noises. During security system installations, maintenance workers unearthed a notebook secreted where the ceiling met the wall, a newer volume than its predecessor. The initial page bore a solitary inscription: "They discovered my former lair, yet not my new abode." The script mirrored the prior notebook. The concluding page exhibited a rudimentary sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a crimson-marked passage and a date for that very night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her dwelling deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television playing softly. The shower continued to run. Within the steam-frosted mirror in the bathroom, a message materialized, etched by a finger: "Gaze aloft." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The hunt for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist versed in renovations, persisted. His architectural acumen had enabled the creation of his concealed web of observation posts and passageways. Thermal scans of Sarah's edifice unveiled no present occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remained a phantom, her case intertwined with vanishing acts spanning multiple states. Detective Morris was plagued not by the graves, the diaries, or even the snapshots of unwitting residents. Rather, it was the image of Sarah, enduring the nightly footsteps above her in an uppermost apartment absent of an upstairs occupant, the steps that ceased upon her knock and responded in kind. At times, in the solitude of his abode, Detective Morris gazed upwards, attuned to the silence, waiting, pondering who else could be listening alongside him. Story 25. She entered through the front door, stirring up dust in the stagnant air. The house stood abandoned, its once grand walls shedding paint, its furniture draped in ghostly sheets. Roaming through its halls felt like stepping into a suspended moment in time, frozen in eerie stillness except for one peculiar detail. The doors, each one she opened, led her back to the same room. No matter which path she chose, no matter how many handles she turned, she always found herself back in the parlor. The only escape was the way she had come, but when she turned around, the front door had vanished. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form shifted the abandoned Victorian from a mere local curiosity to a haunting crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, observing forensic experts gliding through the dim interior like silent specters. The house had garnered a certain reputation among the townsfolk, the house where compasses spun wildly, where whispers of unseen watchers lingered. But now it harbored secrets far more sinister than mere urban legends. The initial assessment suggests she's been deceased for about 3 days, murmured the medical examiner, his voice barely audible. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan had been discovered seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her posture serene, hands clasped neatly in her lap as if awaiting a guest. No signs of struggle, no marks of defense. The scene exuded a chilling tranquility that seasoned investigators found deeply disquieting. "Who stumbled upon the body?" Lind inquired, scanning her notes. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner answered. "They entered, saw her there, mistook her for a trespasser until they drew closer." The house had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, almost 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left the estate in a state of limbo, unwanted, unsold, and largely forgotten save for delinquents and thrill-seekers. Morgan Pierce, aged 26, a graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis. Companions described her as meticulous, driven, fascinated by spaces that defied traditional norms. The abandoned Victorian, renowned for disorienting visitors, must have beckoned to her like a siren's call. Her roommate filed a missing person report 2 days back, Lind remarked. Morgan mentioned exploring the house where wanderers vanish for her studies. Investigations unveiled Morgan's repeated visits to the house in the weeks leading up to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled peculiar acoustic phenomena, sudden drops in temperature, and doors that seemed to lead to different chambers each time she unlatched them. In her final notation, she spoke of bringing specialized gear to record what she termed spatial anomalies. However, said equipment was nowhere to be found. Post-mortem examination unveiled an unexpected detailed traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant employed in certain shamanic rites. The substance was known to induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, yet not in quantities adequate to be lethal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her significant other asserted during interrogation. Morgan was stringent in her research practices. She wouldn't have jeopardized her senses intentionally. Digital sleuthing unearthed shreds of deleted messages on Morgan's phone, conversations with an individual who shared her fascination with the house, someone professing to grasp its enigmas. The exchanges grew progressively intimate and enigmatic. The house retains its memories, one message disclosed. It yearns for someone to comprehend. The inquiry led detectives to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had corresponded with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, and their professional bond had blossomed into something more intimate. When interviewed, Reeves appeared genuinely shattered by her demise. "The house has a reputation," he elucidated. "The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design. He crafted it to mystify and disorient. Morgan believed there was a deeper layer to it, something surpassing mere tricks of architecture." Nonetheless, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the presumed time of death. Surveillance footage depicted him delivering a lecture at a university symposium several hours away. A breakthrough surfaced from an unexpected source: Aliner Blackwood's grandson, now residing overseas. Contacted by investigators, he unraveled a family secret veiled for generations. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house," he divulged. "There were others, always discovered in the parlor, always appearing tranquil. The family termed it the beckoning." He furnished detectives with ancient journals, chronicling deaths initially attributed to heart failure or stroke. The pattern was crystal clear: individuals spending extended periods within the house eventually succumbed to what the family euphemistically dubbed the pull. A secondary sweep of the estate uncovered a concealed compartment behind the parlor hearth. Within, investigators stumbled upon Morgan's missing gear and something more: a small enclave housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged meticulously in a geometric configuration. At its core rested a sculpted figurine, its features smoothed by centuries of touch. Analysis identified the figurine as embodying a deity linked to transitional spaces, gateways between realms. Traces of the alkaloid matching Morgan's system were found on the artifacts. The case took a sinister turn when dust-pattern forensics in the house revealed an additional presence during Morgan's passing. Partial fingerprints incongruent with Morgan's or any known visitors were retrieved from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was discovered deceased in his abode. Like Morgan, he sat facing the entryway, countenance serene, the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his grasp was a key that fit no lock in his apartment but slotted perfectly into the hidden compartment in the Victorian. In his final missive, sent to himself as if to preserve a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't trap you physically, it ensnares your perception. Morgan was correct, the doors led where they have always led, but something tricks you into believing you're retracing your steps. Once you grasp the veracity, you can depart at any time. Yet by then, you no longer wish to." The case remains officially unresolved, catalogued as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has been condemned, entry prohibited by the authorities. Yet rumors persist of lights flickering within on certain nights, and of visitors who enter but never emerge. Some locals assert the house seizes those who delve too deeply into its mysteries. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unearthed something ancient and potent, something existing in the interstices between normal reality. The truth remains as elusive as an exit in a house where every door loops back to the start. Story 26. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints offered no hint of its existence. Yet when the family uncovered a hidden door beneath the old carpet, a door with a heavy, rusted handle, curiosity beckoned them to pry it open. The air that escaped was musty, carrying the essence of damp earth. Darkened steps descended into the unknown. Anticipating storage space, they were met with a solitary chair under a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows. And on the wall behind the chair, a series of photographs awaited them, photographs of themselves. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban abode during the bleak grip of winter, the barren trees outside standing as silent sentinels against the cold sky. The worn 2-story structure exuded a charm they had convinced themselves of, a charm steeped in history. Little did they realize the depth of history within the house and how violently it would intertwine with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the property with her partner, the crime scene secured with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had alerted them to the secret beneath their living room floor. Connors, donning latex gloves with practiced ease, directed the forensic team to meticulously document every detail. The camera flashes illuminated the stairwell, each step groaning under the weight of the investigators. The basement, a small room akin to a standard bedroom, boasted concrete walls painted a dull gray. A lone chair was anchored in the center, under the harsh glare of a bare bulb that spun lazily in an unseen draft. Yet it was the wall of photographs that seized their attention, 37 images laid out in chronological order. These date back nearly 4 weeks, Connor's partner remarked, scrutinizing the timestamps on the prints. Look at this one, Mrs. Mercer asleep, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the kids in their rooms. The absence of forced entry, stolen items, or triggered alarms perplexed the investigators. Privacy had been invaded, safety shattered. The fingerprints in the basement belonged to past owners, individuals who had inhabited the property briefly before selling at declining prices. None had disclosed the existence of a basement. Connors delved into the history, unearthing discrepancies in property records, redacted reports, and altered blueprints. The contractor who had renovated the house 7 years prior adamantly denied the basement's existence, his certainty wavering at the sight of the photographs. Digital forensics unearthed a trove of images on a hidden memory card, depicting not just the Mercers but previous families in intimate moments. Audio files revealed conversations held in every corner of the house, recorded with precision. Connors ordered a thorough search, uncovering a hidden monitoring station behind the photos, a station manned by Edward Kelvin, the house's enigmatic builder who had vanished without a trace. Kelvin's journal chronicled the family's lives with meticulous detail, his final entries cryptic and unsettling. Fingerprint analysis confirmed Kelvin's presence within the hidden spaces of the house, where he had observed, cataloged, but never directly interfered with the residents' lives. The manhunt exposed Kelvin curled within the walls, detached from reality, viewing the families as actors in his private drama. The families fled, leaving behind their possessions, haunted by the realization that they had unknowingly shared their lives with a ghostly spectator. Kelvin's trial unveiled the house's sinister design, a voyeuristic creation from its inception. As the property crumbled, the families carried with them the haunting presence of a watcher unseen, forever questioning their solitude in the spaces they once called home. Story 27. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded borders, memories of a birthday lost to time. Faces frozen in smiles, candles flickering innocently, everything seemed ordinary. Yet when the daughter inherited the box of forgotten photographs, she found it. A mysterious figure lurking in the background, a man shrouded in shadows, always lingering just beyond the warm glow of the candles. He was not part of the family, not a familiar face from those cherished moments. And yet, as she sifted through each photo, he drew closer, his presence growing more pronounced with each snapshot. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while sorting through her late mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box marked memories held a treasure trove of nostalgia, a visual diary of happier times. But instead of solace, Sarah found herself on the brink of a haunting discovery. In the earliest photo, he was a mere silhouette at the periphery, a mysterious onlooker during her 7th birthday celebration. As she flipped through the images, the shadowy figure crept closer, moving from the edges to the heart of the gatherings, always unnoticed by those captured in the frames. Concerned and unsettled, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice trembling with unease. "Dad, who is this man in the background of all these pictures?" A heavy silence hung in the air before her father's response, a sharp intake of breath followed by denial. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone there except family." Doubt and fear crept into his voice, mirroring Sarah's growing apprehension. Seeking answers, Sarah brought the enigmatic photos to Detective Marcus Reed, laying them out on his desk in a hushed precinct filled with the patter of rain against the windows. The detective's experienced eyes traced the progression of the figure through the snapshots, a subtle but chilling evolution that hinted at something darker than mere coincidence. As the shadows danced around the room, Reed's scrutiny deepened, his interest piqued by the inexplicable presence in the photographs. With a methodical approach, Reed inquired, "And no one recognized this individual?" Sarah shook her head, her gaze fixed on the sequence of images that revealed a silent, ominous journey through her past. The detective lined in, absorbing the unsettling details that painted a picture of deliberate, unseen intrusion into cherished memories. Suggestions of the photographer's involvement were quickly dismissed, leaving a palpable sense of dread lingering in the air. Driven by a growing sense of urgency, Reed initiated a thorough investigation, reaching out to surviving attendees of the long-ago party captured in the haunting photographs. But no one remembered the shadowy figure, no one could place him in their recollections of that day. The puzzle deepened as technological tools failed to unmask the mysterious man, his features deliberately obscured as if avoiding detection by the lens. Just when the trail seemed cold, Sarah unearthed more chilling evidence in other family albums, different occasions, different years, yet the same figure haunting the background, a spectral presence lingering unseen in the corners of joyous gatherings. With the help of a skilled computer specialist, hidden details emerged from the aged photographs, offering tantalizing clues to the figure's identity. A breakthrough came in the form of dental records, linking the shadowy specter to a long-lost maintenance worker named Robert Keller. His teeth, once obscured by shadows, now provided a tangible connection to unsolved child abductions that had plagued the region years before. Keller's ties to the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had been celebrated unraveled a web of dark secrets, connecting him to disappearances that had baffled authorities for decades. When authorities excavated Keller's former residence, they unearthed heartbreaking relics: a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all belonging to missing children whose fates had remained unknown for too long. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a sinister truth that had lurked beneath the surface of Sarah's seemingly innocent childhood memories. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the damning evidence of hidden horrors, Sarah received the grim news from Detective Reed: the identification of remains near the vacation property, confirming the fate of one of the long-lost children. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the warmth of the candles seemed to flicker with a somber glow, casting a retrospective shadow over her family's celebrations. The figure in the background, once a ghostly presence in her past, now stood exposed in the harsh light of justice. The invisible threat that had haunted her memories had been unmasked, his malevolent presence acknowledged at last. The sinister specter that had moved through the joyful moments of her childhood, leaving a trail of dread in his wake, had finally met the reckoning of truth. Gathering the incriminating photos, Sarah placed them back in the box, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk unseen in the shadows of our most cherished memories. The silent figures that move through our lives, unnoticed but ever watchful, leaving behind only faint traces of their sinister presence in the frozen moments captured by the camera's lens.